Chapter 1916. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged indifferently. After yesterday's matter, she didn't think that Chewing Fei would still be so stubborn. She truly deserved it. Then do as you wish. Just say it. I want to know, what can I gain from it? Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chewing Fei's breathing became sluggish, and her face instantly became gloomy. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang grasped the fact that she didn't dare to say it, so she planned to intentionally humiliate her. Bailey Hongzhuang, are you sure you wanted to say it? Chewing Fei asked back. Bailey Hongzhuang faintly nodded and said, Say it. Tell me what it is. Seeing that, Chewing Fei slightly paused. Her mind couldn't help but ponder whether she should directly say it or not. The gazes of the three beasties fell on Chewing Fei. They were originally very dissatisfied with Chewing Fei, and now that Chewing Fei dared to be so aggressive, the anger in their hearts could be imagined. I say, what is it? If you have the ability, then say it. If you can't say it, then what are you doing here? Do you think that everyone has the same time as you? Xiaohei mockingly looked at Chewing Fei. Her voice was sharp and merciless. The sudden voice caused Chewing Fei to be shocked for a moment. Her gaze couldn't help but look around. However, this voice clearly didn't belong to any of the core disciples. Just at this time, Chewing Fei discovered that everyone's gazes were astonished as they looked at the white monstrous beast beside Bailey Hongzhuang. Heavens, did I hear wrong? This white monstrous beast can actually speak? I don't think I heard wrong. I also just heard this white monstrous beast speak. What kind of monstrous beast is this? It looks so small, but it actually knows the human language. This is too shocking. As everyone knew, although normal monstrous beasts could communicate with their masters, they simply couldn't speak the human language. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's white monstrous beast, at such a young age, was able to speak the human language. Just from this point, they were able to determine the level of this white monstrous beast. It was probably even more shocking than what they imagined. Chewing Fei looked at the white demon beast in front of her in surprise. Her eyes were full of doubt. What are you? Chewing Fei sized up Xiaohei in front of him. Her white, furry body was like a round ball, which was very comical. However, her eyes were fixed on him, as if she had a deep hatred for him. You're the thing. Your whole family is trash. Xiaohei's eyes were filled with anger. She didn't expect Chewing Fei to be so rude. Her words were even more outrageous. Following Xiaohei's words, Chewing Fei was also dumbfounded. She clearly didn't expect Xiaohei to have such a reaction. In fact, her words were not meant to insult Xiaohei. However, she had never seen such a contract beast before, so she couldn't help but ask what it was. However, Xiaohei obviously didn't think so. If it was said that it originally hated Chewing Fei, then at this moment, it hated Chewing Fei to the extreme. The surrounding cultivators couldn't help but laugh. This white monstrous beast reaction was really interesting. It was much more interesting than a monstrous beast they usually saw. I'm not a thing, Chewing Fei angrily said. Chapter 1917. When Chewing Fei said that, she realized that something was wrong. However, it was too late when she realized it. Xiaohei's words were like a slap to her face. You're not a thing. Your whole family is not a thing. Chewing Fei hurriedly said, her face flushed red. She never thought that her slip of the tongue would be treated as a joke. Following Chewing Fei's words, Xiaohei's face instantly darkened. She looked at Chewing Fei with a threatening gaze. You were the one who said that you're not a thing. Now you're blaming me? You're just a demonic beast. How dare you offend me? Do you believe that I won't kill you? Chewing Fei looked at Xiaohei unhappily. Although she was surprised that Xiaohei could speak, Xiaohei's current actions had already made her lose face. If she didn't express her attitude sternly, everyone would definitely laugh at her. When Chewing Fei said that, Bailey Hongzhuang's originally cold face suddenly revealed a murderous intent. What did you just say? Say it again if you have the guts. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was cold. Her ink-black phoenix eyes rippled with a sharp and frightening light. Chewing Fei actually dared to say such words to Xiaohei. She, Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast, was not allowed to be bullied by anyone. Feeling Bailey Hongzhuang's sharp gaze, Chu Yingfei only felt a prickling sensation on her body. She didn't dare to look at her directly. Even when she almost killed Bailey Hongzhuang, she had never seen Bailey Hongzhuang so terrifying. However, at this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was like that of an Azura from hell. That dense, murderous intent made her heart tremble. Inexplicably, she felt her body turn cold. Her entire person had an indescribable feeling of discomfort. When everyone saw Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, their eyes changed and were dyed with a hint of fear. However, after thinking about it for a moment, everyone understood. If someone said in front of them that they wanted to kill their contract beast, presumably their attitude would not be better than Bailey Hongzhuang's current attitude. Contracted beasts were the most loyal companions of a cultivator. If someone dared to lay their hands on their contracted beasts, they would definitely not allow it. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chu Yingfei understood that this white demon beast was Bailey Hongzhuang's contract beast. So it's your contracted beast. No wonder it's the same as its master, so annoying. Chu Yingfei sneered. The first time she saw this white, demonic beast, she felt as disgusted as the first time she saw Bailey Hongzhuang. Where did this guy come from? Nothing good can come out of dog's mouth. Xiao Bai's eyes were filled with rage. This Chu Yingfei really had the ability to make people hate her the moment she opened her mouth. What's the point of talking so much to this kind of person? Just kill him. Bai Shi's attitude was cold. He didn't even want to look at Chu Yingfei. For this kind of person, just kill her. Bai Shi and Xiao Bai's attitudes were each more unyielding than the other. Over the years, they had followed their master everywhere and met many annoying cultivators. However, this was the first time they couldn't wait to kill someone. When everyone saw that Bai Shi and Xiao Bai could speak, their expressions became very interesting. Chapter 1918. Pei Yifan sized up Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contracted beasts. They were a little different from other cultivators. The moment these 3 contracted beasts opened their mouths, he could tell what kind of state they were in. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang had restrained herself in Limitless Palace. If Chu Yingfei didn't meet Bailey Hongzhuang in Limitless Palace, but somewhere else, Bailey Hongzhuang would have already taken her life. Chu Yingfei sneered after seeing the arrogant attitude of the 3 contracted beasts. You want to kill me with just the 3 of you? What a fool's dream. Chu Yingfei's eyes were full of disdain. Even if her strength had dropped, she was still a green mirror rank 1. With the strength of these 3 contracted beasts, it was impossible for them to be her opponent. The 3 beasts narrowed their eyes and looked at each other. Were they being looked down upon? Master! The 3 beasts looked at Bailey Hongzhuang at the same time. They couldn't bear it anymore. This Chu Yingfei first said that she wanted to kill Xiao He, and now she dared to talk nonsense to them. If they didn't teach her a lesson, she wouldn't know why the flowers were so red. Looking at the eager looks of these 3 beasts, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and then said, Chu Yingfei, since you keep saying that you're stronger than my beasts, why don't you have a competition with them? How about it? Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chu Yingfei glanced at the 3 beasts, and the ridicule in her eyes became even more obvious. Bailey Hongzhuang, what kind of joke are you playing? They want to be my opponent? Chu Yingfei wouldn't fall for Bailey Hongzhuang's trick at all. If she competed with Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beasts, regardless of whether she won or lost, it would be a joke. If she won, as a cultivator and a core disciple of Limitless Palace, she would have an unfair advantage. But if she lost, she wouldn't be able to raise her head again. Therefore, Chu Yingfei would never fall for such a trap. Seeing that Chu Yingfei did not immediately agree, the 3 beasts' eyes were filled with surprise. He originally thought that with Chu Yingfei's pig brain, she would immediately agree after hearing this. He didn't expect Chu Yingfei to be so smart at this time. The 3 beasties frowned. Chu Yingfei's previous actions really made them angry. If they didn't vent their anger, they definitely wouldn't be happy. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the angry attitude of these 3 beasts. She was afraid that if she didn't give them a chance to teach Chu Yingfei a lesson today, they would definitely not let this go. She had been with the 3 beasties for such a long time, so she knew their personalities very well. Judging from Chu Yingfei's attitude today, there would be a conclusion between them sooner or later. There was no time like the present. He might as well let the three beasts perform today. Chu Yingfei, didn't you say that you wanted me to turn you into your previous appearance? As long as you win against my three contracted beasts, I'll agree to it. How about it? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Chu Yingfei provocatively, her expression indifferent and confident. She believed that Chu Yingfei would definitely agree, because Chu Yingfei couldn't bear the consequences at all. Chu Yingfei, who was originally disdainful, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, her eyes changed slightly, and her heart became more and more resentful. She knew that this matter was caused by Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 1919. However, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, she was relieved. At least, this proved that Bailey Hongzhuang had a way to restore her. For a moment, Chu Yingfei kept thinking in her heart. Should she agree to Bailey Hongzhuang or refuse? If she agreed, she believed that with her strength, defeating these three contract beasts could be said to be a simple matter. However, it was always unfair for humans to win against beasts. Moreover, the black and white beasts were so small, it should be easy to fight. But if she didn't agree, she was afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't hand over the antidote. She was still unwilling to tell others about this matter. After all, judging from Bailey Hongzhuang's previous attitude, if she didn't agree, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely pretend that nothing happened. No matter how much she wanted it, it would be useless. After thinking about it, Chu Yingfei still chose to agree. This was the best solution at the moment. Okay, then I'll agree. As she spoke, Chu Yingfei's gaze couldn't help but fall on the three beasts. Her eyes were full of contempt and ridicule. However, with just these three little guys, if I kill them, don't regret it. Hearing Chu Yingfei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasts' gazes turned cold. When the surrounding cultivators heard Chu Yingfei's excessive words, their expressions became interesting. They had seen people who were not afraid of death, but they had never seen someone who was not afraid of death like Chu Yingfei. Do you think we should tell Chu Yingfei about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity? Looking at her, it seems that she doesn't know anything about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity. With Chu Yingfei's current situation, even if we tell her about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity, it probably won't have any effect. Hearing this cultivator's words, everyone was silent for a moment. He was right. The conflict between Chu Yingfei and Bailey Hongzhuang had reached an irreversible point. Even if they wanted to mediate between them, it would be impossible. Moreover, if they could tell Chu Yingfei the relevant information now, Bailey Hongzhuang might think that they were on the same side as Chu Yingfei. This was not a good thing. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was the future wife of the young sect master of Tiangang sect, she was not from Limitless Palace. However, as long as they had a good relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang, it would be helpful in the future. Master, let me go on stage. Kill this guy in minutes. White Lion could no longer hold himself back. It had always been the one bullying other cultivators. No other cultivator had ever dared to speak to it in such a brazen manner. Little Black and Little White also rubbed their palms together. It seemed like they didn't display their strength in Limitless Palace, so everyone thought that they were incompetent. Today, they took advantage of this opportunity to show their strength. They wanted to let these people know that their strength was not as simple as it appeared on the surface. People couldn't be judged by their appearance, and beasts couldn't be judged by their appearance. Since you are so confident, then you and my contract beast will go to the life and death arena and decide the winner. How about it? Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent. When she said this, her tone was extremely determined, revealing a meaning that could not be disobeyed. Chu Yingfei was only at the first level of the Green Realm. Among the three beasts, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were at the 8th level of the Yellow Realm, and Bai Shi was at the 9th level of the Yellow Realm. Chapter 1920. During this period of time, the speed of improvement of the three beasts was already very amazing. Especially after cultivating in the desert world, the strength and combat strength of the three beasts had greatly increased. It was just that they didn't have many opportunities to show off, so no one knew. The current three beasts were completely different from when they first came out of the assessment competition. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chu Yingfei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang as if she was looking at a fool. If she and the beasts were to enter the life and death arena, wouldn't it be easy for her to kill the beasts? Did Bailey Hongzhuang want to give her a chance to take revenge? Or was she really so arrogant that she thought her contracted beasts could compete with her? However, since Bailey Hongzhuang gave her this chance to take revenge, she naturally wouldn't refuse. Contracted beasts were very important to every cultivator. She believed that if she killed Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beasts, she would definitely be depressed to the extreme. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's previous words were clearly said in front of everyone. Even if she killed the contracted beasts, Bailey Hongzhuang still had to give her the antidote. She believed that when that time came, Bailey Hongzhuang would have no choice but to suffer, right? Bailey Hongzhuang, you said it yourself. If I kill your contracted beasts, you have to keep your word. Chu Yingfei emphasized. She wouldn't give Bailey Hongzhuang the chance to regret. After seeing this scene, this person had been worried for Bailey Hongzhuang. Originally, with Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, it was definitely not difficult to kill Chu Yingfei on the life and death arena. However, they couldn't understand why Bailey Hongzhuang chose to let the three contracted beasts do it. If something went wrong, Bailey Hongzhuang would probably regret it. After all, although Bailey Hongzhuang's three contracted beast levels were high, they still looked very young. Their strength couldn't be compared to Chu Yingfei's. Pei Yifan walked over to Bailey Hongzhuang when he saw this. His handsome face was filled with concern. Miss Bailey, this Chu Yingfei is not weak. If you directly let your demonic beast fight her, isn't it too risky? Pei Yifan reminded. Bailey Hongzhuang's three contracted beasts were all very high-leveled. It was hard to find such characters on a normal day. Although he didn't know why Bailey Hongzhuang could contract three demonic beasts, even if she could contract other demonic beasts other than these three, it wouldn't be easy to find another demonic beast of this level in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Pei Yifan. She knew that Pei Yifan meant well. However, she had enough confidence in the three beasts. The three beasts would also encounter a certain amount of danger in the future. Many times, battles were unavoidable. If they didn't fight because of the danger, their growth in the future would be completely limited. Thank you for your reminder. However, the three of them are determined to fight. Bailey Hongzhuang's face rippled with a faint smile. Her expression was calm and without the slightest bit of worry. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Pei Yifan couldn't help but look at the three demonic beasts. That's right. They're definitely going to fight this battle. Xiao He clenched her fist and said, the battle hasn't started yet. The final result isn't clear yet. Perhaps the one who dies on the life and death arena will be Chu Yingfei. Chapter 1921. No matter when, it was always full of confidence in its own strength. Even if the opponent's cultivation was stronger than theirs, its fighting spirit would not weaken at all. After all, over the years, many cultivators who claimed to be stronger than its master had died in its master's hands. This Chu Yingfei would die in its hands. Looking at the three beasts' confident appearance, Pei Yifan's eyes couldn't help but be filled with astonishment. As a disciple of Limitless Palace, he had seen many contract beasts, but he had never seen contract beasts as domineering as the three in front of him. Obviously, under such circumstances, the three beasts would not give up on the life and death ring. Since that was the case, he didn't say anything else. He believed that since Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasts were so confident, it meant that they had the confidence to win. No one was stupid, and Bailey Hongzhuang was even more so. As the first place of the assessment competition, if she didn't have some ability, it was impossible for her to achieve such results. He wasn't a cultivator selected from the assessment competition, but he had a certain understanding of the assessment competition. During the 2 years of the assessment competition, cultivators were in an extremely cruel environment. Schemes were calculated and dangers were everywhere. Inexperienced or simple-minded cultivators would not be able to survive in such an environment. Thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang was also a person with both ability and wisdom. No problem. As long as you can walk down the ring alive, I will definitely tell you. Bailey Hongzhuang gave Chu Yingfei a definite answer. But the premise was that Chu Yingfei could walk down the life and death ring alive. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's calm appearance, Chu Yingfei, who was originally full of confidence, couldn't help but worry. She always felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was too calm. Could it be that these three contract beasts were powerful? Chu Yingfei's gaze couldn't help but fall on the three contract beasts, but no matter how she looked at them, they didn't seem to be very powerful. However, to be on the safe side, Chu Yingfei still carefully sensed them. The final result was as she had guessed. Although these three contract beasts were a bit stronger than the other contract beasts, they still hadn't reached the green realm. They were definitely not her opponent. Chu Yingfei relaxed a bit and said, "No problem. Since that's the case, let's go to the life and death ring now." Chu Yingfei quickly said, as if she was afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang would regret it. The current situation was extremely beneficial to her, but if Bailey Hongzhuang reacted and suddenly changed her mind, then she would be at a disadvantage. She had already thought that she didn't want other cultivators to know that her strength had weakened. None of the three contracted beasts had reached the green realm, so she only needed to kill them as quickly as possible. No one would notice that her cultivation had weakened. Thinking of this, Chu Yingfei couldn't help but be excited. This plan was really too good. When everyone saw Chu Yingfei's fear that Bailey Hongzhuang would regret it, they felt helpless. Only Bailey Hongzhuang would make such a decision. If it were them, they wouldn't let Chu Yingfei take advantage of them. Chapter 1922. I don't know. She seems to be quite confident. Chu Yingfei's strength is actually not weak. Once she fully unleashes her combat power, these three contracted beasts will not be able to escape the fate of death. Everyone sighed. However, these thoughts could only be discussed in private. Bailey Hongzhuang had obviously already thought of a plan. No matter how they advised her, it would be useless. Immediately after, everyone set off towards the life and death ring. Although the life and death ring existed in Limitless Palace, apart from cultivators with deep hatred, most people would not choose to go there. Therefore, when Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest arrived near the life and death ring, there was no one there. This is the life and death ring. Pei Yifan introduced to Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. The life and death ring was similar to the martial arts stage. However, it was much bigger than an ordinary martial arts stage. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest arrived near the life and death ring, many cultivators in the surroundings were attracted by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. Usually, once someone appeared near the life and death ring, it would attract everyone's attention. After all, they were all cultivators from the same sect. Very few people would cause such a scene. Therefore, once someone caused a ruckus in the life and death ring, it would attract many cultivators to watch. However, when the surrounding cultivators saw that the cultivators who came were all core disciples of Limitless Palace, they were even more surprised. Oh my God, what's going on today? The ones who came are actually core disciples? The cultivators' faces were filled with disbelief. Although they were all disciples of Limitless Palace, there was a huge difference between the status of core disciples and them. Not only that, but they also cultivated in different places. Usually, they did not have many chances to see core disciples. Core disciples were like the pyramid of Limitless Palace's disciples. There were very few of them. Logically speaking, the possibility of a conflict between core disciples with few people was very small. Moreover, core disciples had a bright future ahead of them. They did not expect that there would be core disciples walking towards the life and death ring. This was really rare. This is the first time I've seen a core disciple come to the life and death ring. There's going to be a good show today. Look at that woman in a white dress. Isn't she the one who came to our sect with the young sect master of Tiangang sect 2 days ago? That's right, it's her. At this moment, many people recognized Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, It wasn't the first time that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun came to Limitless Palace. This was the second time. He remembered that the last time they came, they only stayed for a short while in Limitless Palace. However, this time, they never left. At first, everyone was curious about what Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were doing here. Now that they saw Bailey Hongzhuang with the core disciples, they were even more surprised. Who is this white-clothed woman? Why would he be with the core disciples? Is she also a core disciple? Everyone was puzzled. Not just anyone could become a core disciple. One had to go through layers upon layers of selections and tests to become a core disciple of Limitless Palace. Chapter 1923. If this white-clothed woman could become a core disciple of Limitless Palace just because she had a relationship with a young sect master of Tiangang sect, it would make them feel too unbalanced. When Chu Fei heard that Bailey Hongzhuang came to Limitless Palace with a young sect master of Heavenly Palace, she couldn't help but frown. Could it be Bailey Hongzhuang knew Di Beichun? When Chu Fei thought of this, she felt that it was impossible. The young sect master of Tiangang sect had a noble status. How could someone like Bailey Hongzhuang be qualified to know him? Let's begin. Let's fight on the life and death arena. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't waste time. Since she came to the life and death arena, it was to end this matter. When Chu Fei saw that Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't wait to start, the joy in her eyes became even stronger. She also couldn't wait to start the competition. As long as she killed these 3 contract beasts, she could recover her original strength. One had to know that she was clearly Green Realm level 5. Now that she suddenly became Green Realm level 1, this feeling was really uncomfortable. Okay, then let's end it as soon as possible. Chu Fei wasn't afraid at all. Since Bailey Hongzhuang was anxious to send the 3 contract beasts to their deaths, she naturally wouldn't stop her. As long as her strength recovered, she would definitely take revenge. Just as Chu Fei was about to step onto the arena, a figure walked to Chu Fei's side. Chu Fei, you want to enter the life and death arena? The woman's voice was filled with surprise. This person was Chu Fei's good friend, Jia Xueqiao. Seeing Jia Xueqiao's appearance, Chu Fei also had a hint of surprise on her face as she nodded her head. Yes, it's me. Who did you have conflict with? It's so serious that you want to enter the life and death arena. Jia Xueqiao's face was filled with worry. She and Chu Fei came to Limitless Palace together. Chu Fei's results were better than hers, so she became a core disciple earlier. Now, she was still working hard. She only hoped that she could become a core disciple in a few days. However, she didn't expect that Chu Fei would fight with someone to the point of entering the life and death arena. One had to know that once they entered the life and death arena, it was a life and death battle. Unless one person died, this competition wouldn't end. Didn't this mean that after Chu Fei entered the life and death arena, she would lose her life? Looking at Jia Xueqiao's worried expression, Chu Fei patted her shoulder calmly, her face filled with a relaxed smile. Don't worry, I won't be in danger. There won't be any danger at all. Chu Fei was confident and certain. If she couldn't even defeat 3 contracted beasts that hadn't reached the Green Realm, then her title as a core disciple wouldn't be worthy of her name. Looking at Chu Fei's confident appearance, Jia Xueqiao's eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of doubt. She chews with Chu's palace. S-heart sect as if she's weeks. However, Chu Fei was so confident right now. This was a bit too strange. Choose with her, asks. Chu Fei smiled and waved her hand, saying, not human. Chapter 1924. Looking at Chu Fei's smug look, Bailey Hongzhuang said indifferently, you could be proud of yourself now. Be careful that you become a dead person later. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chu Fei's expression became slightly gloomy. You just wait to collect the corpse of your contract beast. Seeing that Chu Fei's opponent was actually Bailey Hongzhuang's contract beast, the surprise in Jia Xueqiao's eyes became more and more intense. Chu Fei, who is this girl? How did you offend her? Bailey Hongzhuang, the new core disciple. Chu Yingfei said indifferently. She's not a big deal. If I offend her, then so be it. As a cultivator, the number of people she offended on a daily basis was countless. If she offended someone, then she offended someone. There was nothing to care about. As long as the other party couldn't do anything to her, then there was no need to worry. Bailey Hongzhuang? Jia Xueqiao frowned. Why is this name so familiar? I seem to have heard it somewhere before. At this moment, a surprised voice sounded from the crowd. Isn't this our assessment's first place, Bailey Hongzhuang? I remember that she entered Tiangang's sect. How did she appear in Limitless Palace? Chapter 1925. After discovering this point, Chu Yingfei's face instantly turned ugly. If Bailey Hongzhuang was just an ordinary disciple, it wouldn't matter if she offended her. But if Bailey Hongzhuang was the future young sect master's wife, then she had offended a huge opponent. She couldn't stay in Limitless Palace forever, but once she left Limitless Palace, as long as Bailey Hongzhuang gave the word, she would have no place to go. It would be a simple matter to take her life. Chu Yingfei only felt her scalp go numb. She never thought that there would be such a result. She couldn't understand. If Bailey Hongzhuang really had such an extraordinary identity, why did Bailey Hongzhuang just silently accept it when she insulted her? If it was an ordinary person, their attitude would have been arrogant and insufferably arrogant when faced with this situation. Bailey Hongzhuang was too strange. Chu Yingfei was depressed to the extreme. Which of the extraordinary cultivators she met on a daily basis didn't have their noses in the air? Why was Bailey Hongzhuang different from the others? If Bailey Hongzhuang knew what Chu Yingfei was thinking at this moment, she would be speechless. She never looked at others with her head held high. She was too lazy to pay attention to some meaningless quarrels. Generally speaking, cultivators with a real background wouldn't look down on others. Obviously, the people Chu Yingfei met before weren't really extraordinary people. What should I do now? Chu Yingfei's shoulders kept thinking, but now she was riding a tiger and couldn't get off. If she admitted her mistake to Bailey Hongzhuang now, she was afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang might not forgive her. Moreover, if she did this, she would really become a laughingstock. But if she didn't admit her mistake, then her future would be bleak. Chu Yingfei had never regretted it so much. Although she was arrogant and liked to ridicule some cultivators, she only ridiculed cultivators who didn't pose any threat to her. After all, there were some people in this world that she could not afford to offend. Therefore, she would not choose to offend them. However, he didn't expect such an accident to happen this time. Jia Xueqiao swallowed a mouthful of saliva. She couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang with fear and worry. In the next moment, Jia Xueqiao took a few steps back. He quietly walked away from Chu Yingfei's side, looking like he wanted to distance himself from Chu Yingfei. She regretted standing next to Chu Yingfei, but she believed that Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't notice her too much. As long as she left now, she would not have anything to do with Chu Yingfei. Even though her relationship with Chu Yingfei was extremely good, she had no choice but to leave at a time like this. After all, his future was the most important. This was the consequence of Chu Yingfei offending someone. There was no need for her to bear the consequences with Chu Yingfei. Chu Yingfei also noticed Jia Xueqiao's actions. Her originally gloomy face was now dyed with a hint of paleness. It was extremely unsightly. However, at a time like this, she couldn't say that Jia Xueqiao's actions were wrong. Every man for himself, and the devil takes the hindmost. Everyone would think for themselves. Let's begin now, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Chapter 1926. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Chu Yingfei hesitated for a while, but at this time, the arrow was already knocked on the bow. She had no way out, so she could only continue like this. Thinking of this, Chu Yingfei immediately walked onto the life and death ring. At least, she couldn't lose face in front of others now. After Chu Yingfei walked onto the stage, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze couldn't help but fall on the three beasties. Are you guys confident? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved into a faint smile. Although it was a questioning tone, Her tone already revealed confidence. Naturally, no problem. The three beasties said in unison. See if I don't beat her to a pulp. Xiao Hei clenched her fists, her eyes filled with anger. Chewing Fei actually dared to provoke them in public. They must let Chewing Fei know how powerful they were. Seeing the three beasties full of fighting spirit, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile widened. Thinking back, whether it was her or the three beasties, their strength was very weak. However, they were now able to stand on their own. In the next moment, the three beasties also jumped onto the stage. When the surrounding cultivators saw that Chewing Fei's opponent wasn't Bailey Hongzhuang, but the three contract beasties, their eyes were filled with surprise. What's going on? Is Chewing Fei going to fight the three contract beasties? From the looks of it, that should be the case. But how bored is this Chewing Fei? She actually chose to fight the contract beasties and even went on to the life and death ring? I don't understand. I remember that this Chewing Fei was originally the weakest among the core disciples. I just didn't expect her to fall to the point of fighting with contract beasties. It really makes people speechless. Everyone sighed. Although battles on the life and death ring rarely happened, they had seen it before. However, they had never seen a situation where cultivators and contract beasties fought before. This was really a new thing. Chewing Fei naturally heard the discussions of the other cultivators, and her expression was awkward. As early as when she agreed to fight with the three contract beasties, she already knew that she would be ridiculed like this. However, she had to recover her strength, so she could only choose to agree to Bailey Hongzhuang. Now, the more she thought about it, the more she felt that it wasn't worth it. It was a pity that she had already reached this step. It was inevitable that she would become a laughingstock. The three beasties stood opposite Chewing Fei and looked at each other. I'll go first. I've been annoyed by her for a long time. Blackie rubbed his palms together as his eyes locked on a Chewing Fei. Although its cultivation, its strength, Chu's strength wasn't something that Chewing Fei couldn't compare. Through this period of cultivation in the desert world, not only had its strength increased, but its speed had also far exceeded that of ordinary people. As Hei Hongzhuang Huang, Hey, Xiao Hei, Xiao Xiao, Hey Yi Hei. However, when Little Black said this, Little White frowned and said, No, I don't like her even more. I must teach her a lesson first. It had been holding back its anger before. Now that it finally had the chance to fight with Chewing Fei, it couldn't hold back. Don't worry, leave this kind of thing to me. I'll bite off her neck. Baisher said. Its blood was already boiling. Chapter 1927. Hearing White Lion's words, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai were speechless. White Lion, if you attack directly, then what are Xiao Bai and I going to do? Wouldn't that be like heroes being useless? The three beasties had been fighting together for a long time. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai were very familiar with White Lion's fighting style. For White Lion, the simplest and most violent way was to charge forward and bite off the opponent's neck. One had to know that in this desert world, White Lion had ended many battles this way. However, Chewing Fei had offended them so much. If White Lion settled her so easily, how could they vent their anger? I'll go first, then Xiao Hei, Xiao Bai said slowly. White Lion, you go last. You'll end it. White Lion was stunned for a moment after hearing Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's words. However, after thinking about it carefully, it was indeed so. Okay, then you guys go first. I'll end it, White Lion said. Xiao Bai nodded in satisfaction. Now, it had the chance to attack first. However, Xiao Hei quickly said, No, I should go first, then Xiao Bai. Didn't we already agree on this? Why did you change your mind? Xiao Bai was dissatisfied. It was not easy to come to an agreement, but Xiao Hei still disagreed. That's what you and White Lion agreed on. I didn't agree on this with you, Xiao Hei said. Chewing Fei was standing on the other side, preparing to fight the three beasties. Her emotions were also very complicated. Now that she knew Bailey Hongzhuang's true identity, she did not dare to be as casual as before. If she was prepared to take the lives of the three beasties before, she did not dare to do so now. How important were contract beasts to cultivators? If she killed Bailey Hongzhuang's contract beast, then the enmity between her and Bailey Hongzhuang would be irreconcilable. However, just as Chu Yingfei was thinking about this, she heard the three beasts fighting to be the first to attack her. Especially from their conversation, it was as if they did not put her in their eyes at all. From the arrogant attitude of the three beasts, it was as if they could easily kill her. Chu Yingfei was in a very bad mood after being looked down upon by three contract beasts that were weaker than her. When the three beasts were talking, they didn't hold back at all. In any case, between them and Chu Yingfei, only one of them could walk off the stage alive. They were determined to take Chu Yingfei's life today. Bailey Hongzhuang felt very helpless when she saw the three beasts in such a state. This was like an unequal division of the spoils. She was really worried that before Chu Yingfei could be dealt with, the three of them would start fighting amongst themselves. Although she said that, the smile in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes gradually deepened. The three beasts had always liked to fight. They would fight for this kind of opportunity with all their might, so it was very normal. When Bailey Hongzhuang felt that it was very normal, the surrounding cultivators were not calm. Damn, am I seeing things? These three contract beasts are fighting to kill Chu Yingfei? Since when did core disciples become so easy to deal with? Could it be that these three contract beasts are too arrogant? Look, Chu Yingfei's face is red. Chapter 1928. Let the competition begin. Pei Yifan's voice quickly sounded. At this time, he needed to temporarily act as the referee. As Pei Yifan's voice fell, the three beasts also stopped bickering, and their faces quickly filled with a touch of seriousness. Although they usually had a cheerful appearance, when faced with serious matters, they were very serious. After this discussion, they also came to a conclusion. Xiao He and Xiao Bao would start together, and Baisher would go last. Chu Yingfei looked at the three contract beasts in front of her and also made a decision in her heart. These three contract beasts looked down on her so much, she must definitely teach them a lesson. Only in this way could she regain her face. However, in the end, she would leave the three contract beasts alive. Thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang would also change her opinion of her after seeing this scene. Perhaps there was still room for negotiation. Thinking of this, Chu Yingfei's heart was filled with excitement. Originally, this was already a dead end, but she didn't expect that after careful consideration, there was still some possibility. She was really too smart. In the next moment, a surge of elemental energy surged out from Chu Yingfei's body. Now, she could only display the strength of a Green Realm Level 1. But in this situation, it shouldn't arouse the suspicion of other cultivators. When everyone saw that Chu Yingfei only displayed the strength of a Green Realm Level 1, they couldn't help but have a touch of surprise in their eyes. I remember that Chu Yingfei's strength had already broken through to Green Realm Level 5. Why is she only Green Realm Level 1 now? Thinking about it, she wants to be merciful. After all, if she still has to use all her strength to fight with three contract beasts, it would be a bit embarrassing. That's right, these three contract beasts look very young. Their strength definitely won't be too strong. Why use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken? After seeing the changes in the seal, the core disciples also had some guesses in their hearts. Presumably, Chu Yingfei didn't dare to be enemies with Bailey Hongzhuang after knowing her true identity, so she did this. I knew that if Chu Yingfei knew Bailey Hongzhuang's identity and still clamored with Bailey Hongzhuang, then there's really something wrong with her brain. Unfortunately, Chu Yingfei found out too late. Even if she realizes it now, I'm afraid Bailey Hongzhuang won't care about her. Everyone sighed faintly. In fact, they also felt that Chu Yingfei was really unlucky this time. After hearing everyone's discussion, the three beasts' faces didn't look good. Only they knew that Chu's current strength was only Green Realm Level 1. How was she purposely letting them? Yet, in the eyes of others now, they took advantage of Chu Yingfei. It was really depressing. At this moment, Chu Yingfei was in a very good mood. She didn't expect that she would benefit from this disaster and gain a good reputation. After seeing Chu Yingfei's face, uses eyes. Ingfei's S, let's teach her a good lesson. Let's see if she can still be so proud later. After saying that, Xiao He and Xiao Bai looked at each other and immediately rushed towards Chewing Fei. In the process of rushing, Xiao He and Xiao Bai's strength also appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Yellow Realm Level 8. Chapter 1929. After seeing that Xiao He and Xiao Bai's strength had reached Yellow Realm Level 8, the cultivator's eyes were filled with shock. One had to know that Xiao He and Xiao Bai's appearance was too deceiving. The two little guys were the same as when Bailey Hongzhuang first saw them. Their figures did not change at all. If they could not speak the human language, normal cultivators would only think that they were contracted beasts that had just been contracted not long ago. Moreover, they were the type that was only meant for viewing. These two contracted beasts are at Yellow Realm Level 8. They're really strong. You really can't judge a beast by its appearance. These two contracted beasts are Yellow Realm Level 8 now. They will definitely become stronger in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang actually has two contracted beasts of this level. It's really enviable. According to their understanding, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation was only Green Realm Level 1. The strength of these two contracted beasts was not much weaker than Bailey Hongzhuang. Once they fought, these two contracted beasts would be Bailey Hongzhuang's left and right arms. With these two helpers, the cultivator's combat strength would be different from before. Xiao He and Xiao Bai did not care about the other cultivator's praises at this moment. They only wanted to teach Chu Ingfei a lesson. The two figures quickly leaped closer and turned into two rays of light, one black and one white, that shot towards Chu Ingfei. Chu Ingfei looked at the two figures that were quickly approaching her. Her gaze froze, and her fist went up at the same time. Bang! Chu Ingfei's fist and Xiao Bai's body collided directly. Xiao Bai's body bounced back, and Chu Ingfei's body also retreated a few steps. With this exchange, Chu Ingfei's face instantly turned a bit ugly. Originally, she thought that these two contracted beasts did not have the ability to fight against her. However, after this exchange, she suddenly realized that the black, contracted beast's strength was not weaker than hers. In fact, it was stronger than her. This was simply inconceivable. Even though demonic beasts were usually stronger than cultivators, this demonic beast cultivation was 2 levels lower than hers. Logically speaking, such a difference in cultivation should be able to make up for this point, but now it didn't. If one of the contracted beasts could have such strength, then if all 3 were to attack together, it would not be so easy to win. When Xiao Bai and Chu Ingfei collided, Xiao He turned around and attacked Chu Ingfei from behind. What it and Little White were best at was creating a diversion, and this kind of fighting style could often achieve very good results. Bang! Xiao He's body turned into a round ball and fiercely attacked Chu Ingfei's back. Chu Ingfei didn't underestimate Xiao He either. Since the black furball's power was astonishing, the white furball's power must not be weak either. She definitely couldn't underestimate it. Otherwise, she wouldn't feel good if such a force landed on her body. However, when Chu Ingfei went to deal with Xiao He, Xiao Bai's attack came up again. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were already proficient in creating a diversion. Sometimes, they would only pretend to attack, but Chu Ingfei would miss. Chu Ingfei stood in the middle of the life and death ring and constantly paid attention to her surroundings. Her mental strength was highly concentrated. If she was even slightly careless, she could be attacked directly. Chapter 1930. The situation on the life and death ring was far beyond the cultivator's expectations. Instantly, everyone's gazes fell on the fighting stage in astonishment. This situation was completely different from what they had imagined. Oh my god, these 2 contracted beasts are really powerful. Their cultivation is clearly not as high as Chu Ingfei's, but their battle strength is not weak at all. The entire battle's rhythm is completely controlled by these 2 contracted beasts. If Chu Ingfei doesn't find her rhythm soon, she will die. Now, only 2 contracted beasts are fighting. The other contracted beast hasn't made a move yet. If these three contracted beasts attacked together, wouldn't Chewing Fei be finished? Pei Yifan and the other core disciples didn't know what to say after seeing this scene. Previously, they all thought that this battle was because Bailey Hongzhuang was too impulsive and made a wrong decision. However, now it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang had a card up her sleeve. It was because she had enough confidence that Bailey Hongzhuang chose to let these three contracted beasts fight. They never thought that these three contracted beasts' battle strength would be so much stronger than their own. However, when everyone's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, they quickly reacted. In fact, Bailey Hongzhuang's battle strength was much stronger than her cultivation. At least they had never seen a Green Realm Level 1 cultivator being able to capture a Green Realm Level 5 cultivator. Moreover, Chewing Fei didn't have any resistance at all in Bailey Hongzhuang's hands. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but sigh. Like Master, like contracted beasts. If these contracted beasts followed normal cultivators and not Bailey Hongzhuang, they probably wouldn't have such heaven-defying battle strength. Xiao He and Xiao Bai had been unhappy with Chewing Fei for a long time. Therefore, now that they had the chance to teach Chewing Fei a lesson, they were no longer in a hurry. Instead, they decided to make fun of Chewing Fei. This fellow humiliated them and even dared to mock their master. This was simply a double sin. Ever since the end of the assessment, they had not encountered such an ignorant cultivator for a long time. In addition, they had been cultivating peacefully in Tiangang's sect. Now that they saw such a cultivator again, they only felt that the combative cells in their body were boiling. "Look here," Xiao He said with a smile. Hearing Xiao He's words, Chewing Fei couldn't help but look in Xiao He's direction. However, Xiao He stood there without moving. Bang! Chewing Fei's figure suddenly fell to the ground. Her eyebrows were tightly knitted, and a painful expression flashed across her face. It turned out that when Xiao He attracted Chewing Fei's attention, Xiao Bai's attack had already landed on Chewing Fei. The sudden pain almost caused Chewing Fei to be unable to bear it. These two contracted beasts, whether it was strength or speed, were extremely astonishing. It was extremely difficult for her to dodge. At this instant, Chewing Fei truly regretted to the extreme. She shouldn't have agreed to enter the life and death ring. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't want to give her a chance to take revenge at all. She wanted to enter life here. Chapter 1931. After Chewing Fei fell down, she immediately stood up because she couldn't fall down at all. Once she fell, the attacks of these two contract beasts would come one after another. When that time came, she would really be on the path to death. After Chewing Fei quickly stood up, her gaze immediately locked onto Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Her eyes filled with anger. If it was a head-on fight, these two contract beasts were no match for her at all. However, these two contract beasts didn't fight her head-on at all. Instead, they used this kind of diversion and sneak attack, making her helpless. Coupled with the extremely fast speed of these two contract beasts, she couldn't keep up with them at all. Therefore, under such circumstances, she could only passively suffer. If it was a head-on fight, it would be fine if she was defeated, at least she would be convinced. However, under such circumstances, she only felt that she was extremely sullen. The feeling of punching cotton had no use at all, and it was indescribably uncomfortable. Under such angry emotions, Chewing Fei's gaze was fixed on Xiao He and Xiao Bai. She couldn't continue like this. If the rhythm of this battle was always controlled by these two contract beasts, then she wouldn't have a chance to make a comeback. Thinking of this, Chewing Fei's hands quickly flipped over. In the process of this fight, she realized that whether it was in terms of speed or strength, she couldn't compare to these two contract beasts, so the only way she could win was to use martial arts. The fact that contract beasts couldn't use martial arts was their weakness, and also their shortcoming. As long as she could use this point, once the martial arts landed on these two contract beasts, they would be seriously injured. This was the best way, and also the way for her to turn the tables. After everyone saw Chewing Fei's actions, they understood that Chewing Fei had already thought of a way to deal with these two contract beasts. Once Chewing Fei understood this point, the situation of these two contract beasts wouldn't be as good as before. After seeing Chewing Fei's actions, Xiao He and Xiao Bai also understood Chewing Fei's thoughts. However, they wouldn't let Chewing Fei do this so easily. Just as Chewing Fei was about to use her martial arts, Xiao He and Xiao Bai rushed up again. As long as Chewing Fei's hand seal was interrupted, not only would she not be able to use her martial arts, but she would also suffer a backlash. At this time, it was time to see which one of them was faster. When Chewing Fei saw that the two contract beasts were about to interrupt her hand seal, her expression immediately became ugly. She didn't expect these two contract beasts to be so smart, completely different from the contract beasts she usually saw. Little Black and Little White looked at each other. They originally planned to tease Chewing Fei, but they didn't expect that Chewing Fei had already found a way. Since that was the case, they couldn't continue wasting their time. Otherwise, once Chewing Fei made a comeback, wouldn't they lose all face? Therefore, they had to take advantage of S as soon as possible. When Ing Fei's hand seal, choose Ing Fei S. The Ing Fei's Ing Fei and the completely Xiao, the usually I Fei the Ixio. Chapter 1932. Since that was the case, they couldn't waste any more time. Otherwise, once Chewing Fei turned the tables, wouldn't they lose all their dignity? Therefore, they had to take advantage of this opportunity to get rid of Chewing Fei as soon as possible. In the next moment, Xiao He and Xiao Bai's aura changed. When Baisher saw Xiao He and Xiao Bai's expressions, he understood what was going on. He had been waiting for Xiao He and Xiao Bai to vent his anger. Once they were done, it would be time for Baisher to appear. Under everyone's surprised gazes, Baisher, who had been standing still at the side, suddenly made his move. However, Baisher's action stunned everyone. That was because Baisher's speed was like a cheetah. It quickly rushed in front of Chewing Fei. Its speed was even faster than Xiao He and Xiao Bai, who had shocked them earlier. Isn't this contracted beast a little too fast? It's as fast as the wind. Yeah, I only blinked my eyes, and this contract beast had already rushed in front of Chewing Fei. That's too shocking. Bailey Hongzhuang's contract beasts are getting stronger and stronger. It seems like this contract beast is even stronger than the other two contract beasts. When Baisher appeared, everyone could already feel its unique aura and strength. When Pei Yifan and the others saw Baisher like this, they finally understood that Baisher wasn't bluffing when he said that he could bite Chewing Fei's neck in one bite. He really did have the ability to do so. Xiao He and Xiao Bai's eyes lit up when they saw Baisher make his move. The previous battle had already ended. What they needed now was to end the battle quickly. They wouldn't give Chewing Fei any chance to turn the tables. That was because they needed to prove their strength through this battle. At the same time, they also needed to show how powerful their master was. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the situation on the life and death ring. Although Chewing Fei was preparing to use her martial skills, she was also very familiar with her three contract beasts. They had encountered such a situation before, but the three beasts' reactions had always been very fast. This was something she and Di Beichun discovered together. To the three beasts, their strength was not something that ordinary cultivators could compare with. After improving in the desert world, their speed had also rapidly increased. This was their advantage. However, when faced with a cultivator's martial skills, the three beasts were a little clumsy. However, after some consideration by Di Beichun and her, even if the cultivator used martial arts, it would take a certain amount of time. As long as the three beasts could interrupt the opponent's martial arts during this period of time, then there was a possibility of winning. This was a competition's competition, and she had a certain degree of confidence in the three beasts. In the previous battle, Chewing Fei's confidence had long been destroyed by the three beasts. Even if she had a plan, she would be in the end, under such circumstances, it would be easy for the three beasts' win. Pei Yifan couldn't help but size up Bailey Hongzhuang. On this battle stage, it could be said that the onlooker sees the game more clearly than the person involved. Although Xiao He and Xiao Bai's battle style was a little too much for the eyes to take in, it wasn't impossible to break through this point. Chapter 1933. Now, if Chu Yingfei used her martial skill, Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast would be in danger. However, when Pei Yifan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was still normal. She even had a smile on her face. In Pei Yifan's opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang was a very mysterious woman. She was always as calm as the wind. No matter what the situation was, she always had a nonchalant look on her face. It was as if the matter did not happen to her, and she was just a bystander. She always had a confident smile on her face. It was as if all the variables did not exceed her expectations. And it was this confident smile that made people feel an indescribable power. To be honest, when he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation was at the first level of the Green Realm, he did not think much of Bailey Hongzhuang. This was because a cultivator with such strength was not his opponent at all. However, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's various differences, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang would be an extremely terrifying opponent in the future. It was no wonder that she was able to get first place in the assessment competition. Her strength and methods, as well as her temperament, were far from what ordinary people could compare to. In fact, most of the first places in the assessment competition were men. It was rare for a woman to appear. Once a woman got first place in the assessment competition, she could be said to be a genius among women. He felt that as long as Bailey Hongzhuang was given some time, her development in the future would be extremely terrifying. Following Baisher's appearance, Chu Yingfei panicked. Previously, when Xiao He and Xiao Bai appeared, she was already overwhelmed. Now that the third contracted beast had appeared, and it seemed to be stronger than the other two contracted beasts, she felt even more pressure in her heart. Chu Yingfei's eyes flashed with intense panic. Her face was also dyed with a touch of paleness. The current situation was too troublesome. She did not have the confidence to continue fighting at all. Her confidence had been completely shattered when she fought with Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Her strength was clearly stronger than Little Black and Little White, but she was beaten to the point where she couldn't even fight back. Now that there was one more, she had no chance of winning. If she could, she would raise her hands and surrender right now. Unfortunately, there was no chance of surrendering on the life and death arena. Only life and death could determine victory and defeat. Xiao He and Xiao Bai flashed and attacked Chu Yingfei again. When Chu Yingfei saw Xiao He and Xiao Bai, she quickly retreated. At this moment, Xiao He and Xiao Bai rolled their eyes at each other. They had fought together for such a long time that they already had a certain level of tacit understanding. Therefore, when he saw the look in Xiao He and Xiao Bai's eyes, Baisher understood what was going on. When Xiao He and Xiao Bai forced Chu Yingfei into a corner, Baisher immediately pounced. He could not be bothered to waste his breath on Chu Yingfei. Just as he said before, as long as he rushed up and took a bite, he would be able to end this fellow's life. Chu Yingfei only felt an extremely terrifying force attacking her. Baisher's figure quickly enlarged in her eyes. At this moment, Chu Yingfei only felt her mind go blank. However, she quickly reacted. Chapter 1934. After all, staying alive was the most important thing. I admit defeat, Chu Yingfei shouted. When she was facing death, she realized that nothing was more important than her own life. Looking at White Lion's cold fangs, she felt her body turn cold. An indescribable fear spread in her heart. She wanted to get rid of this fear crazily, and she kept shouting the words, "Admit defeat." However, White Lion would not give her any chance to regret. Just as Chu Yingfei shouted and wanted Bailey Hongzhuang to give her a chance, White Lion's fangs had already bitten her neck. I admit, Chu Yingfei's voice stopped abruptly. Then, everyone heard White Lion chewing. The smell of blood gradually spread throughout the entire life and death ring and entered everyone's nostrils. Gulp! The sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard. Then, the surrounding cultivators could not help but swallow their saliva. It seemed that this was the only way to calm the shock and surprise in their hearts. Xiao He and Xiao Bai gave White Lion a thumbs up. Domineering, Baisha was a man of his word. He would use whatever method he said he would use to end Chewing Fei. Moreover, it was so fast that even they were surprised. White Lion raised its head and looked at Xiao He and Xiao Bai proudly. Just by watching Xiao He and Xiao Bai fight, it already could not hold back. Now, that Chewing Fei wanted to kill them with martial skills, it naturally had to race against time. Therefore, it gave everyone an indescribable shock as soon as it appeared. Oh my god, this contract beast appearance is too shocking. So it didn't attack before to give the other two contract beasts a chance to show off. Once it attacked, Chewing Fei would have been finished. What kind of contract beast is Bailey Hongzhuang? Its combat power is too terrifying. Who would dare to be her enemy in the future? Everyone could not help but shrink their heads. Not to mention Bailey Hongzhuang's strength. Just her 3 contracted beasts were not something that ordinary cultivators could afford to offend. For a moment, everyone was extremely envious of Bailey Hongzhuang. This was truly a blessing that she had accumulated over several lifetimes. If they could have such contracted beasts, their combat strength would be incomparable. Ordinary cultivators would not dare to offend them at all. Even if there were a few more cultivators, they would not be afraid at all. The core disciples all fell into silence. Facing such a scene, they really didn't know what to say. This Bailey Hongzhuang was indeed a person with a strong background. Whether it was her or her contracted beast, their battle prowess was astonishing. The cultivators who originally thought that they should not offend Bailey Hongzhuang were now even more determined to not offend her. Not to mention Bailey Hongzhuang's extraordinary background. They simply did not have the qualifications to resist. Just based on Bailey Hongzhuang's current strength, she was already someone that they could not afford to offend. The 3 beasts slowly walked down from the life and death ring. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also jumped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders. Baisha leaned against Bailey Hongzhuang's leg and rubbed against it, looking obedient and cute. Everyone looked at the 3 contract beasts who were acting cute. They no longer had the valiant appearance from before. They were clearly 3 extremely cute contract beasts. Chapter 1935. Master, how was my performance? Baisha looked at Bailey Hongzhuang proudly, looking as if it was asking for a reward. It did not give Chewing Fei a chance to regret at all. It did not even let Chewing Fei say what she should say and directly ended Chewing Fei's life. After being by its master's side for so long, it had a certain understanding of its master's personality. Since its master asked them to enter the life and death ring, it meant that she did not want to give Chewing Fei a chance to live. Instead of letting Chewing Fei beg for mercy and putting its master in a dilemma, it would rather go up and bite Chewing Fei to death. This way, it would save them a lot of trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Baisha, who kept rubbing against her. The smile in her eyes gradually deepened, but her expression became gentler. Well done. Bailey Hongzhuang gave Baisha a thumbs up and patted its head with one hand. Baisha's actions were becoming more and more in line with her wishes. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's praise, Baisha's face became even more proud. It knew that its judgment was not wrong. Xiao He and Xiao Bai saw Bailey Hongzhuang praise Baisha and could not help but come over. 2 pairs of big eyes stared fixedly at Bailey Hongzhuang, full of anticipation. Master, how was our performance? If Baisha did not praise them, they would feel a little unbalanced. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled and said, "You're all great." She was very satisfied with the 3 beasts' performance today. They completely displayed their true strength. Not only did they perform well, but they also performed well in the battle of wits. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, a smile appeared on the 3 beasts' faces. They did not care about other people's opinions at all. The only thing they cared about was their master's opinion. In fact, the focus of their lives was only their master. They worked hard so that they could be recognized by their master. When their master needed help in the future, they would be able to help their master. Jia Xueqiao looked at Chewing Fei's corpse on the life and death ring. Her eyes were filled with shock. It was only a short period of time. She didn't expect that Chewing Fei would actually die on the life and death platform. As Chewing Fei's friend for so long, she also felt sad for Chewing Fei. However, she couldn't show it at this moment. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang was simply too powerful. She simply did not have the right to be her enemy. It was precisely because Chu Yingfei offended Bailey Hongzhuang that she ended up like this. She absolutely could not follow in Chu Yingfei's footsteps. All of a sudden, everyone had a new impression of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at everyone's silent gazes, and a smile slowly appeared on her face. Since this life-and-death battle is over, let's return to Wind Canyon. After all, this matter was caused by her. Now that everyone had stopped here and was not cultivating, it would not be good if they did not return. With Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone came back to their senses. Previously, they were completely shocked and almost forgot what they were supposed to do. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang reminded them, they finally reacted. Now that the matter was over, they should indeed return to Wind Canyon. Immediately, the group of core disciples walked in the direction of Wind Canyon. Chapter 1936. Although Chu Yingfei was someone they often saw, they sighed in their hearts when they saw her corpse. However, they only sighed in their hearts and didn't have any other feelings. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other core disciples left the life and death ring, the ordinary disciples of Tiangang sect were in an uproar. They didn't expect that in such a short time, one of the core disciples was already missing. Moreover, the outcome was so reversed that they didn't know what to say. Jia Xueqiao stood in the same place. Her emotions were extremely complicated. Although she didn't want to be dragged down by Chu Yingfei was her good friend for many years. Now that Chu Yingfei had died on the life and death ring, she couldn't just leave her alone. She watched as Bailey Hongzhuang's figure gradually disappeared from her sight. However, the surrounding cultivators still didn't leave, so she didn't dare to make any moves. After thinking about it, Jia Xueqiao slowly walked to a corner in the distance and paid attention to the situation on the life and death ring. This matter was only a temporary novelty to the other cultivators. She believed that it wouldn't be long before these cultivators left. After everyone left, she could bring Chu Yingfei's corpse to be buried. Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties returned to the Wind Canyon. To them, the previous matter didn't affect them at all. They still cultivated and rested. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties like this, the group of core disciples didn't say anything else. It wasn't until evening that Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties returned to the palace. Di Beichen noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's return immediately and immediately greeted her. "Wife, you're back." Di Beichen walked out of the house. His handsome face was filled with a warm smile. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and smiled. "Yes, you're here alone today. Don't you feel bored?" Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen smiled. "It's just cultivation. Why would I feel bored?" Usually, he spent most of his time on cultivation. He was already used to this kind of life, so he didn't find it boring at all. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled sweetly. Speaking of which, she was indeed too worried. She only felt that Di Beichen had come to a completely unfamiliar environment because of her. She was only worried that Di Beichen might not be able to adapt. However, looking at the suave Di Beichen in front of her, she felt that no matter what kind of environment he was in, Di Beichen would be able to handle it calmly. Di Beichen knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was confused because of her concern, and the tenderness in his eyes deepened. "How was your training in Wind Canyon today?" Di Beichen asked with concern. As he spoke, Di Beichen's gaze couldn't help but look at the three beasties. Earlier on, he had already informed the three beasties that if anyone were to cause trouble for Bailey Hongzhuang today, the three beasties would not let them off. When the three beasties noticed Di Beichen's gaze, they couldn't help but look excited and proud. However, in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, they didn't immediately tell Di Beichen about this. When Di Beichen saw the three beasties' expressions, he already knew what to do. "Today, we're going to the life and death ring." Chapter 1937. No matter what it was, she didn't want to hide it from Di Beichun. Hearing this, Di Beichun raised his eyebrows, and a hint of concern appeared in his eyes. You and Chu Fei. Yesterday, when Bailey Hongzhuang was talking, he remembered Chu Fei's name clearly. If the red player entered the life and death arena today, there shouldn't be anyone else other than Chu Fei. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly and smiled. You guessed wrong. Hearing this, Di Beichun frowned and kept thinking about the possibilities in his mind. However, he only heard Bailey Hongzhuang mention Chu Fei yesterday. He didn't know anything about the other core disciples of Limitless Palace. Who is it? After thinking for a while, Di Beichun couldn't think of any other cultivator, so he could only ask. Seeing Di Beichun's confused expression, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. My opponent is Chu Fei, but the one fighting today isn't me. Hearing this, Di Beichun was slightly stunned. His gaze immediately fell on the three beasts beside Bailey Hongzhuang. You mean they're the ones fighting today? In just a short moment, Di Beichun already understood Bailey Hongzhuang's meaning. Other than these three beasts, there probably wasn't any other possibility. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. She looked at Di Beichun with praise. That's right, it's them. The three beasts looked at Di Beichun proudly. They had completed the task that Di Beichun gave them. From the looks of it, their performance today should be very outstanding. Di Beichun said with a smile. Of course, with the three of us fighting, the effect is naturally not something that ordinary contracted beasts can compare to. Xiaohei raised her head proudly. Usually, they never had the chance to perform well. Today, they finally had the chance to perform well. You don't know this, but those cultivators were completely stunned by us today, White Lion said with a smile. When it thought about the shocked expressions of those cultivators today, it found it very interesting. Who asked these fellows to actually dare to look down on them? Today, they only had to perform a little, and they no longer dare to look down on them. Isn't that so? Let's see who dares to offend Master now. Xiao Bai's face revealed a look of dissatisfaction. Thinking about Chu Fei's attitude towards its master, it felt a wave of displeasure. Fortunately, after what they had done, no one would dare to look down on their master anymore. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the way the three beasts were fighting for her, and she felt powerless for a moment. To her, the words of outsiders did not affect her at all, but the concern of the people she cared about made her feel very touched. When Di Beichun saw how proud the three beasts were, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. His eyes were full of praise. Seeing that you guys performed well today, I've prepared quite a lot of delicious food for you guys tonight. Following Di Beichun's words, the three beasts' eyes lit up and shone brightly. Really? The three beasts asked in unison. To these three gluttons, there was nothing more important than food. After today's battle, they felt even more hungry in their stomachs. After all, this was their spoils of war. Chapter 1938. When he saw the three beasts confidently heading to Wine Canyon today, he knew that the three beasts would definitely achieve something today. Therefore, he had already told He Mu to prepare more delicious food for them. In this way, they would probably work even harder in the future. After all, it was best to be rewarded and punished. That's great. The three beasts couldn't hide their excitement. First, they were in the limelight, and now there was this celebratory feast. This feeling was too great. During dinner, Bailey Hongzhuang told Di Beichun about the three beasts' performance on the life and death arena today. She was extremely satisfied with the three beasts' performance today, so she had a lot of praise for them. Now, the strength of the three beasties was rising rapidly. Their combat strength was even stronger than their cultivation. This was the result of them never slacking off in their daily lives. The three beasts also raised their heads and puffed out their chests, accepting Bailey Hongzhuang's praise without any modesty. Today, they felt that following their master to cultivate in Wind Canyon was an extremely good experience. In the future, they would always follow their master by her side. In fact, although there were a lot of delicious food, to them, following their master was the happiest thing. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were enjoying dinner, Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu were also listening to Elder Su's report. Elder Su truthfully reported everything that happened today to Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu. Reporting to Palace Master, Madam, Bailey Hongzhuang let her 3 contracted beasts kill Chuing Fei on the life and death arena today. Elder Su cupped his hands and reported. Although he didn't appear in front of everyone today, he was very clear about the development of the situation. Since Chuing Fei voluntarily challenged Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beasts on the life and death arena, as an elder, he wouldn't be too involved in this kind of thing. Listening to Elder Su's report, Nangong Wu's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contracted beasts are so powerful. She had noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contracted beasts before and only thought that they were very cute. She didn't pay much attention to their strength. Elder Su nodded with a look of amazement on his face. Today, when these 3 contracted beasts made their move, they really surprised everyone. The level of these 3 contracted beasts is definitely not low. Their future development potential is also very amazing. Elder Su slowly stated his judgment. He felt that these 3 contracted beasts would have a bright future and would be a great help to Bailey Hongzhuang. Yu Linfeng nodded slightly. He had also noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contracted beasts. Back in the primordial ruins, he had already noticed the uniqueness of these 3 contracted beasts. If his guess was correct, the white lion should be a beast king. When he first saw a white lion, he was very suspicious of White Lion's identity. However, based on White Lion's current performance, it was most likely a beast king. For this, he also admired Bailey Hongzhuang very much. A beast king was the king of all beasts. It was almost impossible for a cultivator to contract with a beast king. So far, he had never seen a beast king form a contract with a cultivator. He also didn't know how Bailey Hongzhuang was able to do this. Chapter 1939. However, what made Yu Linfeng somewhat puzzled was that he never had any understanding of the other 2 beasts. He had never seen such a contract beast before. Even when he flipped through the books, he had never seen such an existence. It was really too strange. He didn't know how Bailey Hongzhuang contracted with these 2 contract beasts. Moreover, the black and white beasts looked very strange. If he hadn't seen them by Bailey Hongzhuang's side, he wouldn't have known what they were. It seems that Hongzhuang also has a lot of trump cards, Nangong Wu said with a smile. She was originally a little worried about Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang was now cultivating with the core disciples of Limitless Palace. Her cultivation was the weakest among the core disciples. If someone deliberately wanted to find trouble with Bailey Hongzhuang, it wouldn't be an easy matter to solve. But now, it seemed that all her worries were for nothing. Bailey Hongzhuang solved all of this without any difficulty at all. Her strength was much stronger than they had imagined. Chuing Fei's body has been disposed of, Yu Linfeng asked. The existence of the life and death arena was originally to allow cultivators to resolve the grudges between them. Therefore, such a thing didn't surprise them at all. However, this corpse had to be dealt with as soon as possible. Otherwise, the impact on the cultivators wouldn't be small. Elder Su nodded slightly. Someone has already helped bury Chuing Fei. If there's anything else, you can report to me again. Yu Linfeng said slowly, his expression indifferent and elegant. The reason why he understood the situation from Elder Su was that he wanted to know how Bailey Hongzhuang's performance was in the Wind Canyon. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang was his disciple. He wanted to know Bailey Hongzhuang's mentality and how hard she worked. Fortunately, he was very satisfied with the results. Whether it was Bailey Hongzhuang's hard work in cultivation or her calmness when dealing with things, he admired it very much. After Elder Su left, Nangong Wu couldn't help but look at Yu Linfeng with a smile on her face. You have a good eye for choosing disciples this time. The first time she saw Bailey Hongzhuang, Nangong Wu only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance was very outstanding, but she was afraid that her strength was not that strong. However, Now it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang was a person with both talent and beauty. She was simply impeccable. I might as well get past my wife. Yulin Feng couldn't help but chuckle. He had been with Nangong Wu for so long, so he knew Nangong Wu's character very well. If Nangong Wu was not satisfied, then even if it was his disciple, Nangong Wu would think of a way to make him leave. From the looks of it, everything was going smoothly. Lin Feng, this Wind Canyon's assessment is not simple. If there is no one to guide her, I'm afraid that Bailey Hongzhuang will need a long time to successfully pass this assessment. Nangong Wu frowned. Ever since she knew about Bailey Hongzhuang's background, she felt more sympathy and love for Bailey Hongzhuang. Thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang must be impatient to raise her strength and avenge her parents. If possible, she also hoped that she could help Bailey Hongzhuang to raise her strength as soon as possible. However, Yu Linfeng's thoughts were clearly different from hers. Yu Linfeng intended to let Bailey Hongzhuang figure everything out herself so that she could break through. However, from his point of view, this would waste too much time. Chapter 1940. Wifey, what you're thinking about is the rapid improvement in a short period of time. However, the process of cultivation and understanding is very beneficial to Bailey Hongzhuang. If I tell her everything now, she won't be able to experience the process of pondering. Give her a fish and you feed her for a day. Everything can't be rushed. Only after she grasps the method of thinking can she safely face other problems in the future. Yu Linfeng was as calm as the wind. In the past, he was also very anxious to complete all of this. However, in the end, he realized that rushing to complete everything might cause him to lose more things. Therefore, he didn't panic and took things one step at a time. This was the right way to go. Nangong Wu looked at Yu Linfeng, who was talking. He always exuded a charm that could enchant people. He was wise and steady, making people have no choice but to believe in him. After thinking for a moment, Nangong Wu nodded and said, "I believe in your judgment." She knew that she had always been an impatient person. No matter what happened, she always wanted to solve it as quickly as possible. However, at this time, Yu Linfeng would always be by her side to remind her. She believed that Yu Linfeng's judgment wouldn't be wrong. Since he arranged it like this, he must feel that it was better for Bailey Hongzhuang. She could only control herself and not be too anxious. Otherwise, it would have a negative effect on Bailey Hongzhuang. After Hongzhuang passes the test to the Wind Canyon, I will have time to study explosives with her. Nangong Wu couldn't hide the excitement on her face. She also had an indescribable preference for explosives. It was a pity that no one had the same hobby as her, so she could only study it on her own. Last time, when only Xiao Bai had a certain interest in Li Hongzhang, he couldn't help but be excited. Many times, interests and hobbies needed to be shared with someone to feel the joy of it. Looking at Nangong Wu's impatient appearance, a doting look appeared in Lin Feng's eyes. He then nodded. "No problem. As long as Hongzhuang is willing, you can do it at any time." "That's great." Nangong Wu's face was full of smiles. However, very quickly, a look of worry appeared in her eyes. "Is there still no definite news about Hongzhuang's parents?" Nangong Wu's eyes flashed with a light of concern. 3 months had already passed, but they still hadn't received any news. This couldn't help but make them a little anxious. Yu Linfeng frowned. "We haven't received any news yet." He had already asked Di Beichun, but until now, Shitian Pavilion still hadn't received any definite information. He wasn't surprised by this. Yu Xiqing was not a simple person. She must have hidden this matter very deeply and would not be easily discovered by others. She was able to hide for so many years without being discovered by others. Just from his point alone, one could see that she had hidden her methods. Even if the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion were to take action, they would not be able to find out the real result in a short period of time. Given the current situation, they could only continue to wait. The relationship between the young sect master and Bailey Hongzhuang was also very good. She believed that the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion would do their best to investigate this matter, so they didn't need to worry too much. Chapter 1941. It's been so long, and we still haven't gotten any news. Could there be a problem? Nangong Wu asked with a frown. There shouldn't be any problem. If there really was a problem, then they would have died long ago. They wouldn't have waited until now. Hearing this, Nangong Wu nodded slightly. Yu Linfeng's words were indeed very reasonable. However, under such circumstances, she felt even more sorry for Bailey Hongzhuang. From the time Bailey Hongzhuang came to Limitless Palace until now, she had never revealed the slightest bit of sadness. It was as if nothing had happened. However, she knew very well that all of this was hidden in the depths of Bailey Hongzhuang's heart. Treat Bailey Hongzhuang well. All these years, it hasn't been easy for her. Yulin Feng sighed faintly. At that time, he was already considered very unfortunate. However, he did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang's life to be even more miserable than his. As Bailey Hongzhuang's elder, he also decided to take good care of Bailey Hongzhuang. Therefore, if he could help Bailey Hongzhuang, he would not hesitate at all. Hearing Yu Linfeng's words, Nangong Wu looked deeply at Yu Linfeng. She had a certain understanding of Yu Linfeng's feelings. If not for this, Yu Linfeng would not let Bailey Hongzhuang go to the stairway to heaven to cultivate. This was Yu Linfeng's big secret. Just this point alone, Yu Linfeng had already taken a huge risk. However, her thoughts were the same as Yu Linfeng's. Bailey Hongzhuang was worth the risk. I will treat her well, Nangong Wu said. At night, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun went to the stairway to heaven to cultivate again. Cultivating here was of great help to them. Cultivating here for one day was equivalent to cultivating outside for many days. The three beasts also felt that they had made great progress while cultivating here. Especially after cultivating with Bailey Hongzhuang for an entire day in Wind Canyon. They felt that cultivating on the stairway to heaven was even more effective. In the following days, Bailey Hongzhuang cultivated in the Wind Canyon during the day and went to the heaven stairway to cultivate at night. In this process, Bailey Hongzhuang's progress was extremely fast. She continued to analyze how she could stay in Wind Canyon for a longer period of time and put into practice. When the core disciples of Limitless Palace saw Bailey Hongzhuang's improvement, their hearts were filled with shock. He still remembered that when they first started cultivating in the Wind Canyon, they could only last for an hour in the first month. However, Bailey Hongzhuang only used a few days to stay inside for 2 hours. This cultivation speed and understanding ability simply made them gasp in amazement. If it wasn't for the fact that none of them told Bailey Hongzhuang the secret of cultivating here, they would only think that Bailey Hongzhuang had such great progress after she understood the method. What made everyone speechless was that not only Bailey Hongzhuang's rapid progress, even the three contracted beasts were staying in the Wind Canyon for a longer period of time. This was too hard for them to accept. They were cultivators, but they couldn't compare to the three beasts. This was too much of a blow. Although everyone was speechless, they didn't show it on the surface. On this day, when everyone saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's strength had broken through to the 3rd level of the Green Realm, they were completely speechless. Chapter 1942. She has been cultivating here for less than a month. During the day, she has been cultivating in the Wind Canyon. Only at night would she be able to improve her cultivation. But until now, I have not improved at all. Bailey Hongzhuang has already improved by 2 levels. What kind of abnormal cultivation speed is this? No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang was able to become one of our core disciples. Just this potential alone is not something that ordinary people can compare to. The core disciples were helpless. Originally, they were able to become core disciples of Limitless Palace because they thought that they were geniuses. But after meeting Bailey Hongzhuang, their self-confidence had taken a huge hit. What was a genius? After the survival of the fittest, only the geniuses who were compared were the real geniuses. Originally, they were in the core disciple team, and everyone was working hard to improve their cultivation. They did not feel that they were much weaker than the others. Until Bailey Hongzhuang appeared, they realized that this was a big problem. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, they were not geniuses at all. At most, They were a group of mediocre people. After Pei Yifan got along with Bailey Hongzhuang, his admiration for Bailey Hongzhuang also deepened. Just Bailey Hongzhuang's hard work was enough to make people blush with shame. In fact, as a core disciple, every one of them was extremely hardworking. It was just that Bailey Hongzhuang's hard work and focus was stronger than them. In many disciples' opinion, the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang could have such a fast breakthrough speed was related to the elixirs that she had. After all, after everyone cultivated in the Wind Canyon, they relied on using their cultivation technique to recover their spirit energy. Only Bailey Hongzhuang used elixirs to recover as fast as possible. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang cultivated in the Wind Canyon for the shortest time. However, she spent the most time in the hurricane. Bailey Hongzhuang enjoyed this kind of cultivation process. Every day, she could feel her own improvement. Every day, the time she spent in the Wind Canyon became longer. She believed that as long as she continued to improve like this, it wouldn't be long before she would be able to pass the test of the Wind Canyon. Most importantly, she didn't care if she could last 4 hours in the Wind Canyon. She was more concerned about her control over her elemental energy. She believed that when she used the same martial skill in battle in the future, she would be able to save even more origin energy. This might not seem like a big deal, but in a real fight, especially when the difference in strength between the two was not too big, this point was extremely important. It was very likely that it could help one win or save one's life at a critical moment. Time passed slowly. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that she didn't have many pills left. When she was cultivating in the Wind Canyon, the consumption of this pill was extremely shocking. Even though she originally had quite a number of medicinal pills, under such consumption, she was still clumsy. Although Di Beichun had brought a lot of elixirs with him, he didn't bring many elixirs that could restore elemental energy. This was because as long as it wasn't for training outside, the demand for these elixirs wouldn't be high. Why don't I go to Limitless Palace's pill refining hall to buy some herbs? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun inquiringly. They were now in Limitless Palace and not Tiangang's sect. Naturally, she couldn't ask for any elixirs. Chapter 1943. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang had already stayed in Limitless Palace for a period of time, she had always been shuttling back and forth between Wind Canyon and her bedroom. As for the other places in Limitless Palace, she did not know much about them. However, she believed that the structure of each sect would not be too different. Limitless Palace was such a big sect, there would definitely be a pill refining hall. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun thought for a moment and then nodded his head. That's fine too, but I'm afraid it will waste your time. A trace of worry emerged between Di Beichun's brows. If it was any other place, he could use money to buy pills. However, in Limitless Palace, it was obviously not feasible. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. It's all right, it won't waste my time. Since my cultivation has increased, my mental strength should have increased as well. Recently, she had been busy increasing her cultivation and had slacked off a lot on her pill refining skills. Now that she had this opportunity, she felt that it was extremely good. After all, she had been cultivating intensely all day long. If she could relax a little, she might be able to achieve better results. Di Beichun looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's glowing appearance, and his gaze became even gentler. In fact, from the beginning until now, he only knew that Hongzhuang was good at pill refining skills. However, he had never seen Hongzhuang refine pills with his own eyes. Thinking about it, when Hongzhuang was concentrating on pill refining, she also had her own charm. Since you've already made your decision, then it's decided. Di Beichun's lips curled into an elegant and charming smile. He also felt that Hongzhuang could relax a little under such high-intensity cultivation. Changing the method of cultivation was also a good choice. Thinking back, when his master had led him to cultivate, he had also used the same method. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head slightly. Then I won't go to Wind Canyon to cultivate today. I'll go to Pill Refining Hall to buy some herbs. I'll go with you, Di Beichun said immediately. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyes slightly and looked at Di Beichun with a sweet smile. The corners of her lips gradually rose. Sure. Over the past few days, she had been training in Wind Canyon with the three beasts during the day. Only Di Beichun stayed in the palace. Since she wasn't going to cultivate in the Wind Canyon today, she was naturally willing to go with Di Beichun. After making the decision, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun immediately set off. They did not know where Limitless Palace's Alchemy Hall was located. However, they believed that as long as they asked around, they would know the answer. When the three Bs saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were about to set off for Pill Refining Hall, they who loved a lively atmosphere naturally would not miss out on it. Xiaohe and Xiao Bai immediately leaped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders, while Bailey Hongzhuang followed behind her. Seeing how self-aware the three beasts were, Bailey Hongzhuang already knew what they were planning to do. Immediately after, the two of them and the three beasts walked towards the direction of Pill Refining Hall. There weren't any cultivators around the palace. Hence, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun could only walk all the way out before they saw anyone else. When Di Beichun saw two figures approaching from the front, he and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other and walked towards them. "Ladies, may I know where Pill Refining Hall is?" The two ladies who were walking were suddenly stopped by someone and could not help but frown. Chapter 1944. They never thought that there would be such a handsome man in the Limitless Palace. Their initial displeasure from the sudden interruption instantly dissipated into nothingness. A man like this was simply their dream. When Di Beichun saw that the two women were only staring at him in a daze without any reaction, his handsome brows furrowed slightly. "Ladies, may I ask where the Alchemy Hall is?" Di Beichun spoke again and repeated his previous question. When they heard Di Beichun's voice again, the two women finally regained their senses. Their faces were quickly dyed red as they felt embarrassed by their previous actions. Not far away, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the two women's reactions, and her expression was tinged with interest. Di Beichun's charm was truly unmatched. As long as the women saw Di Beichun, most of them would have this expression on their faces. Back then, in Fengbo country, although Di Beichun's legs were crippled, there were still many women who adored him. Just this point alone was enough to see how great Di Beichun's charm was. She and Di Beichun had been together for such a long time. Every time she saw Di Beichun, she still could not escape from his charm. That impeccable face, those affectionate and enchanting eyes were enough to intoxicate any woman. Perhaps, after spending so much time together, she could feel Di Beichun's unique charm even more. Every time she saw him, she would be intoxicated. "Master, Di Beichun's charm is not ordinary. We've only asked for directions, and these two women are already infatuated with him." Xiaohe shook her head and clicked her tongue. "Evildoer. He's really an evildoer. Master, you have to be more careful in the future. There are many beautiful women in the sect, and there are also many moths who cause trouble." Xiaobai frowned. Looking at the two women's infatuated expressions, it felt a wave of displeasure. Di Beichun is Master's. What are these two girls doing? Master is so charming. Only a man like Di Beichun is worthy of Master. I don't think Master needs to worry about this at all. After all, Master isn't someone these mediocre people can compare to. White Lion raised its head proudly. In its mind, only its master was the most charming woman. Ordinary women could not compare to its master. Upon hearing White Lion's words, Xiaohe and Xiao Bai looked at each other. They felt that White Lion was right. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but rub Baisher's head and smile when she saw how the three beasts were fighting for her. "Don't worry. With the relationship between Beichun and I, we don't need to care about this at all." The three beasties couldn't help but glance at Bailey Hongzhuang. As expected, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes didn't show the slightest bit of displeasure or worry. Under the circumstances where their hearts were connected, nothing else would have any effect. The Alchemy Palace is in the direction of the Alchemy Palace. As long as you follow this path, you can only turn right when you reach a fork in the road. When you reach a large hall, you'll reach the Alchemy Palace. The two women blushed, and their hearts thumped as they pointed the way for Di Bachin. Their hearts were filled with excitement. "Thank you." Di Bachin joined his fists together and turned to leave. Chapter 1945. The two of them looked at Di Bachin's back, wondering if they had the chance to get to know Di Bachin better. However, the two of them saw Di Bachin walk to the side of a woman, and their originally beating hearts could not help but dim a little. However, the two of them refused to give up. Perhaps the two of them were just friends, or perhaps they were brother and sister. If that was the case, perhaps they still had a chance. Di Bachin quickly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side with a mesmerizing smile on his handsome face. "Wife, I already know how to get to the pill refinery hall." Following Di Bachin's words, the two women, who were filled with anticipation, completely lost all hope. "Wife." That woman was actually his wife. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, "Let's go then." Then, the two of them and the three beasts walked towards the pill refinery hall. The two women stared blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Bachin. They felt extremely helpless when they saw the tacit understanding between the two of them. However, when the two of them saw Bailey Hongzhuang's face, the glimmer of hope in their hearts was completely extinguished. This was because they could not be compared to her at all. The difference between them was simply an uncrossable chasm. They cannot compare to her at all. This man already has a wife at such a young age. That's unbelievable. Didn't they say that cultivators get married at a later age? Why is this man so early? The two women sighed faintly. Their hearts were filled with helplessness and lamentation. Unfortunately, they no longer had a chance. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Bachin had walked some distance away, she could not help but laugh. "Bachin, you're really charming." Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Bachin. Those two women were looking at me with jealousy in their eyes. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's playful look, Di Bachin grabbed Bailey Hongzhuang's soft hand with his right hand. "Then, my wife, you'll have to watch me closely." Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Di Bachin. "Do you still need me to watch you closely?" "No need. Your husband will always belong to my wife alone." "How about that?" Di Bachin's gaze was fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. His eyes were filled with curiosity and ridicule. Hearing Di Bachin's straightforward words, Bailey Hongzhuang's face turned slightly red. She turned her head to the other side, pretending that nothing had happened. However, the corners of her lips could not help but curl upwards. Di Bachin saw Bailey Hongzhuang looking to the other side. He did not intend to let Hongzhuang off so easily. In the next moment, his figure flashed and appeared on the other side of Bailey Hongzhuang. With a glance, Di Bachin saw the happy curve of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips, and the smile in his eyes couldn't help but deepen. "My wife, you're not being honest." Bailey Hongzhuang was a little embarrassed to be exposed by Di Bachin. However, now that Di Bachin had the evidence, she could not deny it. Looking at the affectionate Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Bachin, the three beasts looked at each other and smiled. Even though they were not the parties involved, they could still feel the joy of the two. Laughing and joking along the way, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Bachin finally arrived at the pill refinery hall. Limitless Palace's pill refinery hall was comparable to Tiangang's Sec's. However, compared to Tiangang's Sec's solemn and strict decorations, Limitless Palace's pill refinery hall was brighter and more gorgeous. Chapter 1946. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Bachin stopped in front of the Alchemy Palace Hall for a moment and immediately walked in. Bailey Hongzhuang had already brought her own alchemy cauldron, so she planned to buy some medicinal ingredients in the Alchemy Palace Hall and return to cultivate. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Bachin walked into the Alchemy Palace Hall, many cultivators' gazes landed on the two of them. One had to admit that the two of them had outstanding appearances that were too eye-catching. Hence, no matter where they were, they would be the center of attention. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the Alchemy Palace Hall in front of her. She didn't know much about the Alchemy Palace Hall, so when she saw it for the first time, she couldn't help but take a few more glances. In her line of sight, the left side of the Cultivation Palace Hall was the place to buy medicinal pills, while the right side of the Alchemy Palace Hall was the place to buy medicinal ingredients. The Alchemy Palace Hall didn't only have one floor, but there were even higher floors. According to D. Beichun, all the alchemists in the sect would choose to refine pills in the Alchemy Palace Hall. This was because there were other senior and junior brothers to interact with here, and there were also instructors. This was very effective in improving their alchemy skills. Hence, if Bailey Hongzhuang guessed correctly, this higher floor should be the place where the other alchemists refine pills. Although she couldn't go to the other floors to take a look, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that refining pills in the Alchemy Palace Hall should be a very good feeling. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was fixed on the medicinal ingredients area on the right side of the Alchemy Palace Hall. She didn't need to buy any medicinal pills, because directly buying medicinal pills would require her to pay more. Correspondingly, buying medicinal ingredients would be much easier. However, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't know how to buy medicinal ingredients, and she didn't know if she could buy them with money. On this point, D. Beichun didn't say much. Every sect had different settings, so she couldn't determine what Limitless Palace's settings were. However, in Tiangang's sect, one could buy medicinal ingredients with money. It was just that there weren't many cultivators who did so. This was because other than the disciples in the Alchemy Palace Hall who needed to buy medicinal ingredients, the disciples in the Cultivation Palace Hall didn't need to. After all, they didn't know how to refine pills. Bailey Hongzhuang and D. Beichun slowly walked to the medicinal ingredients area, and the three beasts followed closely behind them. When the cultivators in the Palace Hall saw Bailey Hongzhuang and then walked over, their gazes couldn't help but fell, of course. They didn't know what these two people wanted to do. What are they trying to do? Although everyone didn't know the identity of Bailey Hongzhuang at first, after seeing the three contract beasts behind Bailey Hongzhuang, they had a certain guess in their hearts. After all, the Bian sect's Palace Bianz's and Essen Huang's Lordess Palace Pill. Therefore, when the cultivators saw these three beasts, they could almost determine Bailey Hongzhuang's identity. Once Bailey Hongzhuang's identity was confirmed, everyone could guess D. Beichun's identity. The young sect master of Tiangang's sect had always been famous, but there weren't many cultivators who had seen him in person. Because ordinary people didn't have the qualifications to come into contact with D. Beichun, many people couldn't recognize D. Beichun even if they saw him on a normal day. Chapter 1947. Miss Bailey, what do you want to buy? The disciple from the medicinal herbs area inquired. Seeing that the other party had directly called out her name, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, I want to buy these medicinal herbs. Bailey Hongzhuang handed over the list in her hands to the other party. Before coming to the pill refining hall, she had already written down the medicinal herbs she needed to buy. To the current her, she didn't need any other medicinal herbs. The only thing she needed was the medicinal herbs for the qi returning pill. After the disciple received the list from Bailey Hongzhuang, he looked at it carefully. After seeing the medicinal herbs on the list, the disciple could tell at a glance that these were the medicinal herbs needed to refine the qi returning pill. Suddenly, the disciple couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang with a bit of doubt. Miss Bailey, these are the medicinal herbs for the qi returning pill. If you need the qi returning pill, why don't you go directly to the medicinal herbs area to buy it? Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. I only want to buy these medicinal herbs. I wonder if I can buy them with gold coins? Every sect had their own points system, and many things between disciples were converted using points. Although she had been cultivating in Wuji Palace during this period of time, it was all in Wind Canyon. Points and the like had nothing to do with her. You can. The disciple smiled lightly. It's just that the price of using gold coins will be slightly higher than outside. No problem. Bailey Hongzhuang heaved a sigh of relief. As long as she could buy the medicinal herbs, there was no harm in spending more gold coins. In actual fact, she had stayed in the assessment competition for 2 years. The amount of gold coins she had was really not small. It was just that, in the assessment competition, gold coins had no use at all. So she had always kept them. Now that she could use them to buy medicinal herbs, it was extremely good. Miss Bailey, how many sets of medicinal herbs do you need? The disciple inquired. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment. Now that she had a huge demand for the chi-returning pill, since she was here, she might as well buy some more. Give me a few hundred servings, Bailey Hongzhuang said. With Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the cultivator's face could not help but change. He stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in a daze, wondering if he had heard wrong. Lady Bailey, tell me, how many portions do you want? 300 will do, Bailey Hongzhuang said. The level of the chi-returning pill was not high, and with her current strength, the speed of refining the chi-returning pill was also very fast. Although it would take a certain amount of time to refine 300 sets of pills at the very least, it would not be a problem to refine enough chi-returning pills for daily cultivation. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's repeated words, the disciple heard it clearly, and the shock in his heart grew stronger. Bailey Hongzhuang was just a cultivator, but she actually wanted to buy 300 sets of medicinal herbs. This was a bit too much. However, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's confident look, the disciple did not question further. Lady Bailey, although the amount of medicinal herbs we have prepared here is not little, but 300 sets, I am not sure if we have enough. Give me some time, I will count them. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Then I will have to trouble you. The disciple immediately started to count the medicinal herbs for Bailey Hongzhuang. It was rare to see such a large purchase of medicinal herbs. Even the alchemists in the pill refinery hall would only buy a few dozen sets of medicinal herbs together. 300 sets, this was really a little shocking. Chapter 1948. Di Beichen stood not too far away and sized up the entire pill refinery hall. Although Limitless Palace had only been established for a short period of time, its layout and arrangements were extremely good and no one could find any fault with it. The more he looked, the more he would be able to learn. After all, if he wanted the sect to have a better development, he needed to learn with an open mind. Very quickly, the disciple finished counting and said, Miss Bailey, what a coincidence. We have 300 sets of medicinal ingredients here, and there is not a single set left. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly and a smile appeared in her eyes. Thank you. Bailey Hongzhuang handed over the gold coins needed for the 300 sets of medicinal ingredients to the disciple and placed the 300 sets of medicinal ingredients into her Qinquan bag. Just as the disciple said, using gold coins to buy medicinal ingredients was much more expensive than outside. However, as a sect's cultivator, they were not poor people. Hence, the majority of the disciples could afford such a price. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to leave after purchasing the medicinal ingredients, a cultivator walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and said to the disciple in the medicinal ingredients area, Give me 50 sets of medicinal ingredients to refine the energy recovery pill. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the disciple's eyes were filled with surprise. They did not expect that the other party was also here to purchase the energy recovery pill. Bailey Hongzhuang did not stay for long. She turned around and walked towards Di Beichen. She needed to hurry back to refine the pills. After all, the more time she saved, the more she could improve. Di Beichen, let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled lightly. Di Beichen saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had already bought the medicinal ingredients and smiled as he nodded. All right. After Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and left, the disciple in charge of the medicinal ingredients area said, Senior Yao, I'm sorry. All the medicinal ingredients for the energy recovery pill today have been bought by that lady. As a cultivator of the pill refinery hall, Yao Yiren naturally knew this disciple. Hence, he directly called him Senior Yao. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was currently cultivating in Limitless Palace, everyone knew that she was a cultivator of Tiangang's sect. Hence, they only addressed her as Miss Bailey. Hearing this, Yao Yiren could not help but frown. I remember that the amount of medicinal ingredients in the medicinal ingredients area every day is quite a lot. How could it be sold out? There were quite a number of disciples in the alchemy hall. Hence, the amount of medicinal herbs consumed every day was extremely large. However, as one of the 10 great sects, they naturally would not be lacking. No matter what, it was not to be sold out. Mississippi. Of you, Miss Bailey. Bought. Senior apprentice brother Yao. Why don't you come back tomorrow to buy it? I'll prepare it for you. Energy B. But it. Yao Yaren's position in the alchemy hall wasn't low, and he was also very famous, but his temper was also not good. Hence, if he could, he was not willing to offend Yao Yaren. He did not expect that everyone would come to buy the energy recovery pills, medicinal ingredients today. There were still leftovers when he sold them on normal days. Yao Yaren's eyes were filled with displeasure. Since I came here specifically to buy medicinal ingredients, I naturally have my own use. I don't care what you do. Go and gather 50 sets of medicinal ingredients for the energy recovery pill for me now. I have a use for it. Chapter 1949. Following Yao Yaren's words, the disciple's face couldn't help but reveal a difficult expression. Senior brother Yao, today's medicinal herbs have been sold out. We can only wait until tomorrow to collect more. There really isn't any left today. Limitless Palace also had certain regulations for collecting medicinal herbs. He sold medicinal herbs here to earn a certain amount of points, but the quantity of medicinal herbs was not something he could control. Once these words came out, Yao Yaren's face couldn't help but darken. Since he had already promised the other party, then he absolutely couldn't break the promise. With his reputation, if he couldn't even handle such a small matter, wouldn't it be embarrassing if word got out? As for buying the chi-returning pills himself, that was something he wouldn't even consider. Earning points wasn't an easy thing to begin with. He had to keep his points to exchange for a better pill furnace. Who is the person you said bought all the chi-returning pills? Yao Yaren asked aloud. The other party really didn't know the rules. One person actually bought 300 sets of medicinal herbs. What would the other alchemists do? Moreover, buying so many medicinal herbs for the chi-returning pills was too exaggerated. It's that Miss Bailey, the disciple said. Got it. Yao Yaren narrowed his eyes. The other party didn't know the rules, so he had to let the other party understand. Looking at Yao Yaren's expression, the disciple knew that the situation wasn't good and couldn't help but say, Senior brother Yao Shi. However, Yao Yaren waved his hand, and a look of impatience appeared on his face. He completely ignored the disciple's words. In this pill refining hall, his position was quite high. Even alchemists with good pill refining skills had to give him some face. What more an alchemist who was still practicing with the chi-returning pills? The disciple looked at Yao Yaren's departing figure and fell helpless. He originally intended to remind Yao Yaren of Bailey Hongzhuang's identity. Although the current Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't a cultivator of Limitless Palace, she was still someone who couldn't be offended. However, the situation now was already out of his control. The cultivators in the alchemy hall didn't know what Yao Yaren and the disciples in the medicinal herbs area were talking about. They only saw Yao Yaren walking out aggressively with curiosity in their eyes. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun left the alchemy hall, they walked towards the direction of the palace. As for the other places in the Limitless Palace, they didn't have any plans to explore it. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out behind them. Hey, wait a minute. Yao Yaren did not remember what the medicinal ingredients area disciple had said. Therefore, he did not know the name of the woman in front of him. In fact, he was too lazy to remember. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun couldn't help but frown when they heard the word hey. Could it be that he was calling them? Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun tacitly ignored the voice and continued to walk forward. When Yao Yaren saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were ignoring him, his face turned ugly. I'm talking to you, didn't you hear me? Yao Yaren strode forward and caught up with Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. He stood in front of them. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Yao Yaren in front of her, and her eyes were filled with doubt. In her impression, she had never seen the man in front of her before. Naturally, she couldn't say that she had offended him. Chapter 1950. What do you want? Baichen's extraordinarily handsome face was filled with a cold and indifferent light as a steady domineering aura quietly filled the air. This guy actually dared to be so disrespectful to them. When Yao Yeren saw Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang, he couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment. He had never seen these two people before. Moreover, from the temperament of these two people, he could tell that they were much stronger than ordinary cultivators. Hearing Baichen's words, Yao Yeren only felt an inexplicable pressure. It actually gave him a sense of oppression. When he thought of this, Yao Yeren felt that it was a little ridiculous. Even if the two people in front of him had outstanding looks, they shouldn't make him feel pressured. One must know that his position in Limitless Palace wasn't bad, especially in the alchemy hall. His alchemy skills were much stronger than many disciples. Among the alchemy hall disciples that the elders valued the most, he was one of them. I heard that you just bought all the medicinal ingredients for the qi returning pill. Yao Yeren frowned. Compared to his previous overbearing manner, his imposing manner had inexplicably weakened a little. Even he himself didn't notice it. With Yao Yeren's voice falling, Bailey Hongzhuang's face showed a look of understanding. It turned out that the other party had come looking for her because of the medicinal ingredients she had purchased. From the other party's expression, she was afraid that the other party also needed the medicinal ingredients for the qi returning pill, so they came looking for her. If the other party's attitude was a little more polite, she naturally wouldn't mind giving a portion of the medicinal ingredients to the other party. However, the other party was so rude that she really didn't have the slightest interest in giving them away. After all, the other party wanted to take the medicinal ingredients from her because they needed her help. But with such an overbearing attitude, it was as if they were ordering her around. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't like it. That's right, it's me, Bailey Hongzhuang replied. Seeing that the medicinal ingredients were bought by Bailey Hongzhuang, Yao Yeren's expression changed a little. You bought so many medicinal ingredients by yourself. Have you thought about the feelings of the other alchemists? Yao Yeren's face was still full of displeasure. He had never seen the two disciples in front of him before and only felt that the other party should not be disciples of the alchemy hall. Plus, if it was a disciple of the alchemy palace, they should be showing him respect. However, the two of them didn't show any signs of respect. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. She didn't feel anything towards Yao Yeren's words. Anyone can buy medicinal herbs. Since there's a need, what's wrong with buying medicinal herbs? I have never heard that one person is not allowed to buy so many medicinal herbs. Bailey Hongzhuang's tone was a little colder. The other party's attitude was clearly to pick a fight. Looking at her superior attitude, it was obvious that she looked down on Baichen. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's eloquent appearance, Yao Yeren's brows wrinkled even tighter. Do you know who I am? What does it have to do with us who you are? Baichen said coldly. He was very unhappy with Yao Yeren in front of him. Someone actually dared to use such a nonsensical question to find trouble with them. Did they really think that they were easy to bully? Looking at Baichen's indifferent appearance, Yao Yeren felt even more displeased. He had stayed in the alchemy palace for so long, and no one had ever dared to treat him with such an attitude. I am Yao Yeren. Yao Yeren emphasized. Chapter 1951. Not to mention Yao Yeren, Baichen never cared about the names of the generally unknown elders in Limitless Palace. It was just a mere disciple. Baichen simply didn't put him in his eyes. However, Baichen's words, in Yao Yeren's eyes, were simply a deliberate provocation. He didn't believe that as long as it was a disciple of Limitless Palace, there was almost no one who hadn't heard of his name. His reputation had always been extremely resounding in the Alchemy Palace Hall. Even cultivators from other palaces had a certain demand for medicinal pills. Therefore, they would also know of his name. It was precisely because of this that Yao Yeren had always been proud of. After all, to be able to have such a status and reputation in such a huge, limitless palace was not something an ordinary cultivator could do. However, this cultivator in front of him actually dared to provoke him like this. How could he not be angry? Never heard of it. Yao Yiren laughed instead of being angry. However, there was a trace of coldness in his eyes. In Limitless Palace, there's actually someone who says they haven't heard of my name. Yao Yiren looked straight at Di Beichun, as if he wanted to see through all of Di Beichun's thoughts. You think too highly of yourself. Bailey Hongzhuang's pitch-black phoenix eyes were filled with a touch of ridicule. Even when she was cultivating with the core disciples, she had never seen such a rampant disciple. She understood that alchemists had a high status in the sect. Therefore, alchemists had always been very arrogant. However, it was obvious that Yao Yiren's arrogance in front of them was useless. Di Beichun looked at Bailey Hongzhuang beside him. He suddenly understood why Bailey Hongzhuang had always provoked countless cultivators over the years. It was because there were too many stupid people in this world. Usually, as the young sect master of Tiangang's sect, any cultivator who saw him would be courteous to him. Even the young geniuses he met when he went out to cultivate naturally didn't dare to go overboard with him after knowing his identity. However, after following Bailey Hongzhuang to the Limitless Palace today, he understood that there were some conflicts that appeared without any reason. Moreover, it was impossible for them to be amicable. I overestimated myself. Yao Yiren sneered. Ask the disciples here, who doesn't know my name? Rather than saying that I overestimated myself, it's better to say that you guys are ignorant. Yao Yiren glanced at the surrounding cultivators. Originally, the number of cultivators in the vicinity was not small. Now, after the conflict between him and Bailey Hongzhuang, the number of onlookers had increased. How did Yao Yiren get into a conflict with Bailey Hongzhuang? Isn't he just looking for trouble? Ever since the incident between Bailey Hongzhuang and Chu Yingfei, many cultivators had already listed Bailey Hongzhuang as a person they absolutely could not offend. Fortunately, nothing like this had happened during this period of time. However, they did not expect that there would be a problem in front of the Alchemy Palace. Moreover, looking at the situation, the person who was looking for trouble seemed to be Yao Yiren and not Bailey Hongzhuang. Who knows? I didn't notice what happened either. I only know that after Bailey Hongzhuang bought some medicinal herbs and left, Yao Yiren suddenly chased after her. Then it became like this. Chapter 1952. What does it have to do with us who you are? Bailey Hongzhuang was speechless for a while. Could it be that this guy came here to show off in front of them, looking for a sense of accomplishment? However, she had never heard of such a person before. Di Beichun was obviously too lazy to deal with such a small character. He even felt that it was a waste of time to talk to him. He directly held Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand and walked forward. There was no need to waste his breath on such a person who had no sense of existence. Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughts were the same as Di Beichun's. They were both people who valued time. It was not worth wasting time on such things. Seeing Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang walking past him and preparing to leave, Yao Yiren felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were afraid of him. The complacency in his eyes deepened. Now that there were more and more cultivators around, Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang could no longer pretend, so they wanted to leave quickly. One must know that the Alchemy Palace was his territory. What? You want to leave now? Yao Yiren naturally could not let Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun leave just like that. If he let them leave, then wouldn't he be the one who would lose face? Let me tell you, unless you leave the herbs behind now, don't even think about leaving. The more Yao Yiren spoke, the more complacent he became. At first, he had planned to buy some herbs, but now he had completely given up on this idea. He would just take it for free and save some points. Following Yao Yiren's words, Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. In the past, during the assessment competition, she had seen many rude and unreasonable cultivators. But ever since she came to the sect, such situations had decreased a lot. She never thought that such an unreasonable person would appear in front of her. I was the one who bought these herbs. Why should I give them to you? Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang was too lazy to waste time on a guy like Yao Yiren. But as Yao Yiren became more and more excessive, she was also angered. If a tiger did not show its might, did he really think that she was a sick cat? Di Beichun's eyes were filled with a gloomy light. This guy could actually be so cocky in Limitless Palace. This made his wife even more unhappy. If Hei Mu was here and saw Di Beichen's expression, he would know that someone was going to be in trouble. Usually, Di Beichen was always an indifferent person, but once he made a move, he would be merciless in the world. Originally, he didn't want to cause trouble in Limitless Palace, so he planned to ignore it. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the surrounding cultivators also understood the situation. It turned out that this was the case. Regarding Yao Yaren's usual arrogant personality, everyone had some understanding. But no one thought that Yao Yaren would dare to be so unreasonable in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Wasn't he too arrogant? I told you to give it to me. You have to give it to me. Yao Yaren did not care whether he was reasonable or not. Since the other party made him unhappy, he would make the other party even more unhappy. Damn, is this guy an idiot? Xiao Hei had been holding back, but this guy in front of her was simply an idiot. Chapter 1953. Bite him to death. White Lion licked its lips. Recently, it had been quietly cultivating by its master's side. Now, a fellow who doesn't know what's good for him had suddenly appeared. It looks like it's about to make a comeback. These evildoers who have offended its master, let it bite them to death one by one. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai glanced at White Lion and gave it a thumbs up. Although White Lion's words were a little bloody and violent, they were very much to their liking. When Yao Yaren saw the three beasts by Bailey Hongzhuang's side suddenly speak, a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. However, when he heard the contents of the three demonic beasts' conversation, his expression turned ugly. These fellows dared to say such things about him. They've gone too far. I think you're all looking for death. As he spoke, Yao Yaren was about to kick White Lion. This fellow actually wants to bite him to death. It doesn't even know if it has the ability to do so. When Yao Yaren made this move, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed. A wave of ruthlessness and murderous intent emerged in her heart. Someone actually dared to attack White Lion in front of her. They're simply looking for death. Just as Yao Yaren's foot was about to kick out, the primary energy in Bailey Hongzhuang's body quickly surged forth. She wanted to teach Yao Yaren a lesson. White Lion glared fiercely at Yao Yaren. It wanted to bite off Yao Yaren's neck. However, before Bailey Hongzhuang and White Lion could make a move, the crisp sound of bones breaking suddenly rang out. Crack! This crisp sound was not soft. Even in this noisy environment, Bailey Hongzhuang could hear it clearly. What followed was Yao Yaren's blood-curdling scream. Ah! Yao Yaren shrieked, and his body fell to the ground. When the crowd heard Yao Yaren's blood-curdling scream, they could not help but look at him. Before their eyes, Yao Yaren had fallen to the ground, and Di Beichen's foot was stepping on Yao Yaren's knee. In this short moment, many cultivators could not see what had happened, but Yao Yaren's bones had already broken. Yao Yaren's face turned pale because of the pain. He stared blankly at Di Beichen, unable to recover from the pain for a while. My leg! Yao Yaren could feel his leg bones shattering under Di Beichen's foot. How dare you treat me like this? He simply couldn't believe that with his position in Limitless Palace, someone actually dared to be so ruthless to him. However, when Yao Yaren said this, Di Beichen's eyes became increasingly indifferent. He then stepped on Yao Yaren's other leg. Crack! Another crisp sound rang out, and Yao Yaren once again screamed out. His deathly pale face was extremely ugly. Cold sweat continuously appeared on his forehead. His entire person was about to be killed. At this moment, Yao Yaren didn't dare to say anything more. He was afraid that if he said another word, the other party would directly take his life. The onlooking cultivators couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Di Beichen's move had no warning at all. Not only that, Di Beichen's ruthlessness was simply shocking. As cultivators, injuries were inevitable. However, when Di Beichen attacked, the crowd only felt that it was difficult to resist. Chapter 1954. After Bailey Hong Zhuang and the three beasties saw Di Beichen's clean and neat move, there was a touch of surprise in their eyes. They all felt that Yao Yiren deserved to be taught a lesson. However, Di Beichen's move was really stunning. Without using any elemental energy, Yao Yiren was completely dumbfounded with just a casual step. My goodness, Di Beichen's move is really mighty and domineering. Too cool. Xiaohei sighed. She rarely saw Di Beichen make a move, but every time Di Beichen made a move, it would give people a sense of amazement. It was really too awesome. Baisher's eyes were also filled with excitement. He felt that the way he usually appeared was already very cool, but Di Beichen's ruthlessness and decisiveness was even more amazing. After the onlooking cultivators saw Di Beichen's move, the amazement in their eyes deepened. However, many people present knew Di Beichen's true identity. Therefore, they did not find it difficult to accept. After all, once the sect's young sect master made a move, he would not show any mercy. Yao Yiren is really looking for trouble. What kind of person is Di Beichen? If you want to kill him, it's a simple matter. Yeah, Di Beichen's level is not something we can touch. Yao Yiren still wanted to bump into him. It's already good that he's not dead yet. This is really embarrassing. Yao Yiren is so unreasonable. He's simply making a joke out of himself in front of Di Beichen. For a moment, everyone looked at Yao Yiren with dissatisfaction. If both sides were cultivators from Limitless Palace, it wouldn't be a big deal to have a conflict. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were both from Tianyang's sect. Yao Yiren was so unreasonable. Wasn't this equivalent to making all the disciples of Limitless Palace lose face? Between two sects, any disciple's performance could represent the sect's face. Yao Yiren had brought shame to all of them. The disciple from the medicinal materials area also ran out. However, after seeing the situation in front of him, he shrunk his neck. He wanted to remind Yao Yiren before, but Yao Yiren ignored him. He couldn't do anything about it. Now that things had gotten to this point, he'd better pretend that he didn't know anything. After seeing that Yao Yiren had stopped, Di Beichen glanced at Yao Yiren indifferently. If Yao Yiren dared to say another word, he would break Yao Yiren's neck in the next moment. Noticing Di Beichen's cold gaze, Yao Yiren only felt a chill on his back. His throat seemed to be blocked, and he couldn't utter a single syllable. He felt a strong fear. Di Beichen in front of him was like a devil. Now, he no longer doubted that as long as he said a few more words, Di Beichen would definitely take his life directly. In the next second, Di Beichen left with Bailey Hongzhuang. From the beginning to the end, he didn't want to waste his breath on Yao Yiren. After seeing Di Beichen's way of handling things, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but marvel in her heart. This method was indeed domineering. He didn't give the other party any chance to explain or understand. This deterrent power was strong enough. Compared to killing Chewing Fei among the three beasts a few days ago, it was probably even more powerful. Chapter 1955. It wasn't until Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's figures disappeared from Yao Yiren's sight that Yao Yiren finally dared to speak. Which palace did those two fellows come from? Yao Yiren shouted. The pain in his leg was still unable to suppress the anger in his heart. He had stayed in Limitless Palace for so long and had never suffered such humiliation. He only felt that he was about to explode from anger. Although the injury of his broken leg was very serious, as long as he could get medicinal pills and recuperate for a period of time, he would be able to recover to his original state. But now, he was being treated like this in front of the Alchemy Palace. How could he swallow this anger? When the crowd of Alchemy Palace's alchemists knew that Yao Yiren was being treated like this, they all rushed out. Looking at Yao Yiren's angry appearance, their expressions revealed some helplessness. Who were those two people just now? They actually dared to treat Yao Yiren like this? An alchemist's eyes revealed a look of surprise. With Yao Yiren's identity, logically speaking, no one should dare to treat him like this. But now, he was being humiliated by others. When the cultivators from the other palaces saw that many alchemists were confused, a touch of helplessness emerged in their hearts. These alchemists usually stayed in their rooms to cultivate. They simply didn't know anything about other matters. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's identities were now well known in the other cultivation palaces. However, there were still many people in the Alchemy Palace who didn't know. Those two people just now weren't from our limitless palace. A cultivator spoke out. Hearing this, the anger in Yao Yaren's eyes intensified. How dare they treat me like this when they're not from our limitless palace? I think they're courting death. At this moment, Yao Yaren finally understood what Di Beichen said. It turned out that Di Beichen really had never heard of his name. He wasn't a disciple of Limitless Palace. Naturally, he wouldn't know his name. But the more it was like this, the angrier Yao Yaren became. If the other party knew his name, how would they dare to treat him like this? However, when everyone saw the furious Yao Yaren, they felt even more helpless. Senior Brother Yao, that man's identity is not simple. A cultivator reminded. Looking at Yao Yaren's angry appearance, it was almost certain that he wanted to find trouble with Di Beichen. However, once Yao Yaren went to look for trouble, it would be a dead end. Yao Yaren frowned. Her identity is not simple. No matter how extraordinary his identity is, could he be the young palace master? Yao Yaren sneered. For him to have such a reputation in Limitless Palace, it meant that he wasn't someone ordinary disciples could compare to. Hearing Yao Yaren's words, the cultivator next to him had a look of surprise in his eyes. Senior Brother Yao, how did you know? The man exclaimed in surprise. He's the young sect master. As soon as these words came out, Yao Yaren froze for a moment. He looked at the cultivator beside him in surprise, wondering if he had heard wrongly. What did you say? He is the young master of Tiangang's sect, the cultivator said immediately. Suddenly, Yao Yaren was dumbfounded. He stared blankly at the cultivator beside him. His eyes widened as he wondered if he had heard wrongly. However, it was obvious that there was almost no possibility of it being wrong. Tiangang's sect's young sect master. Wasn't that Di Beichen? Chapter 1956. This sense of oppression and pressure was not Yao Yaren's illusion at all. It was real. The original anger and dissatisfaction instantly dissipated into nothingness, and Yao Yaren only felt a burst of fear. If his words just now were a little more extreme, then he really would have lost his life. In front of Tiangang's sect's young sect master, what was his identity? If the other party wanted to take his life, it would be a simple matter. If he had known earlier, he would not have offended Di Beichen. This was simply courting death. After understanding all this, Yao Yaren's target of anger changed. At this moment, he was most angry with the disciple of the medicinal herb area. Since he knew that Di Beichen was such a person that he could not afford to offend, he did not remind him. Not only did he let him suffer such a big loss, he also offended a person that he could not afford to offend. It was really hateful. The disciple of the medicinal herb area had already pretended that he did not see anything and returned to his position. He wanted to remind Yao Yaren earlier, but Yao Yaren did not listen to him at all. Regarding this, he was also very helpless. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen returned to the palace. I wonder if that Yao Yaren still has a hole in his head and wants to take revenge on us. Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with interest. Usually, this kind of person who courted death was not so easy to deal with. Often after teaching them a lesson, they would still recklessly come looking for trouble the next time. It shouldn't be. There are many cultivators near the alchemy hall, and there are also many people who know our identity. I believe that those people should have told Yao Yaren all this. Xiaobai pondered. If no one told Yao Yaren, then it would be really interesting. That guy totally deserved it. Presumably, after he knows who he has offended, his expression will also be very interesting. Baisher's voice was full of ridicule. When he thought of Yao Yaren's previous actions, he felt very unhappy. Bailey Hongzhuang looked sideways at Di Beichen. Di Beichen's expression was very indifferent from beginning to end. Obviously, He did not take Yao Yiren seriously at all. He only taught Yao Yiren a lesson because he felt that Yao Yiren was too troublesome. Bei-chun, I think we should go to the desert world later. The time spent in the desert world is longer, and I can refine more pills there. However, I'll need you and White Lion to protect me. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a thoughtful light. Today was the only day that she did not go to Wind Canyon. She still had to continue going tomorrow, so there wasn't much time left for her to refine pills. No matter how he thought about it, this was the most time-saving method. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen thought for a moment and nodded. Okay. The three beasts also showed expressions of approval. With them and Di Beichen around, Master definitely wouldn't be disturbed while he was refining pills. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips couldn't help but smile. After returning to the bedroom, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others entered the desert world. The desert world was the same as before. It was vast and boundless. Ever since they came to Limitless Palace, they hadn't come to the desert world for some time. Now that they were here again, they had a different feeling. Bailey Hongzhuang directly took out the pill furnace and placed the herbs beside her one by one. Chapter 1957. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the cauldron in front of her. It was the cauldron that she had obtained from the remains of the assessment competition. However, she had not had many chances to use the cauldron during this period of time. Coincidentally, she wanted to take this opportunity to see the effects of the cauldron. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. Di Beichen's face blossomed into a smile that made Bailey Hongzhuang feel at ease. With him by Bailey Hongzhuang's side, no demonic beast would interrupt Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang felt at ease and began refining pills. From a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang began to refine the Dan. Her face was filled with a touch of seriousness. She focused all of her mental energy on the control of the fire and sensed everything in detail. As her cultivation level increased, so did her mental energy, making it easier for her to control the control of the fire. However, Bailey Hongzhuang still needed to be fully focused. This was because a slight distraction could cause problems. Furthermore, she had not refined pills for a long time. Naturally, she needed to pay more attention. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang enter the state of refining pills, the three beasties revealed a look of understanding. Every time their master focused on refining pills, she would no longer pay attention to her surroundings. Instead, she would focus all of her energy on refining pills. Especially when refining important pills, their master would not pay attention to them, even if they were jumping around her. Not only that, they had heard their master say that she was trying something new this time. Although they did not know what their master was trying, they believed that it would not be simple. While the three beasties were deep in thought, Bailey Hongzhuang was also deep in thought. In the past, she had only refined one pill at a time and had not tried anything else. However, for a pill like the energy recovery pill, which had high demand, it would be a waste of time if she could only refine one pill at a time. As her abilities increased, not only did she not feel any sense of accomplishment, but she also felt a sense of urgency. This was because the cultivators around her were getting stronger and the competition was getting more intense. In comparison, she did not need too many cultivation resources in the early stages of her cultivation. However, as she progressed, the demand for cultivation resources increased continuously. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang decided to try refining multiple pills. Otherwise, she would need more time to refine pills in the future. Once she succeeded, she could save a lot of trouble in the future. This was not the first time Bailey Hongzhuang thought of trying this. In the past, she had heard from the old fellows in the clan that some alchemists could refine multiple pills at the same time. They were as rare as a phoenix's feathers ants. However, once an alchemist was able to do this, then this alchemist level was already completely unmatched by other alchemists, because their skills had far surpassed other alchemists. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't care how many of these pill masters there were. She only cared if this method was successful. As long as she could do this, she could save a lot of time when refining pills in the future. With her current demand for pills, this would undoubtedly be a great help to her. Chapter 1958. After all, time was the most precious thing. Moreover, the amount of time needed to refine pills wasn't little, and most of the time, refining pills didn't just require one pill, but many pills. Hence, this kind of ability was simply too important. Now that her ability wasn't weak and her mental energy was extremely valiant, she could now try this method. Although the failure rate was very high, but if she succeeded, then all the effort would be worth it. It was because of this that she bought so many sets of medicinal ingredients. If this attempt didn't succeed, she would at least leave 100 sets of medicinal ingredients to refine pills. Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes and felt everything in the pill furnace. Just as she had expected, this pill furnace's grade was extremely high and was much stronger than the pill furnace that she had used to refine pills in the past. No matter if it was the perception or transparency, it was far from what the pill furnace in the past could compare to. When refining pills, there was a feeling of being at ease. This was the most important reason why so many pill masters pursued high-quality pill furnaces. A high-quality alchemy furnace could greatly reduce the difficulty of an alchemist's alchemy, and the quality of the refined pills could also be improved. It was truly a powerful weapon. In her previous life, the pill furnace that Bailey Hongzhuang used was also of high quality, but she didn't have any foundation when she transmigrated, so she could only use an ordinary pill furnace. Now that she had this pill furnace, she felt that it was easier for her to find a feeling. As long as she sensed carefully, she would be able to clearly understand the situation in the pill furnace. Her mental energy extended above the pill furnace, and the temperature of the fire and the changes of the medicinal ingredients were all under her control. The three beasties paid attention to Bailey Hongzhuang, who was concentrating on refining pills, and their eyes couldn't help but be filled with admiration. The grade of the energy recovery pill wasn't high, and with Bailey Hongzhuang's current ability, refining it was an extremely simple matter. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't refined pills for a period of time, but with the help of this pill furnace, Bailey Hongzhuang still succeeded in refining the first energy recovery pill easily. The rich pill fragrance spread out, and Bailey Hongzhuang then took out the pill and placed it into the white porcelain bottle. Di Beichun saw that Bailey Hongzhuang's refining speed was extremely fast, and his eyes were filled with amazement. He also knew that the energy recovery pill's grade wasn't high, but logically speaking, the time required to refine it wasn't short. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's refining time was completely out of his expectations, and it really shocked him. "My wife, your refining speed is really fast." Di Beichun sighed. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Alchemy is also a matter of practice. Once you refine more, the refining speed will also increase. Although the time needed to refine pills was roughly the same, as long as the alchemist's ability was sufficient, the time needed to refine pills could be shortened. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun also nodded slightly. He had heard about this from the alchemy masters before. However, he didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be able to do this at such a young age. One had to know that the alchemy masters he usually saw were not young anymore. Chapter 1959. However, it seemed that he had underestimated Bailey Hongzhuang. Her ability was much more powerful than he had imagined. After refining the first pill, Bailey Hongzhuang did not stop. Instead, she continued to refine the second pill. After refining 3 pills in a row, Bailey Hongzhuang stopped refining pills. After refining 3 pills, she had completely regained her senses. She also had some confidence in refining 2 pills at the same time. She needed to adjust her state of mind and adjust her mental power to its optimal state before trying again. After Di Beichun knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had such thoughts, his heart was filled with astonishment. "Wife, Until now, I have never heard of an alchemist who could refine two pills at the same time. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. Even the alchemy masters that he had seen on a daily basis could only refine one pill at a time. It would be too difficult to refine two or more pills at the same time. I have also heard of this from my elders. However, I have never seen such an alchemist before. Bailey Hongzhuang admitted frankly. In the past, such alchemists were rare, so she had never seen one with her own eyes. However, she believed that since her elders had said so, such people must exist. Moreover, she had been an alchemist for a long time. This kind of thing was completely feasible in theory. However, there was still a certain distance to the process of success after putting it into practice. However, she did not mind trying. After all, many things that had never happened before only appeared after trying. After Di Beichun heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words, a look of contemplation appeared in his eyes. He felt that since Bailey Hongzhuang's elders said so, there must be a possibility. However, now that he had a deeper understanding of Bailey Hongzhuang, he increasingly felt that the difference between 1,000 years later and 1,000 years ago was too great. Wife, logically speaking, although many things from 1,000 years ago have been lost after 1,000 years, we should have made a lot of progress after 1,000 years. But until now, I still feel that the era you were in was more outstanding than the one we are in now. Di Beichun could not understand this point. Times had always been improving. No matter what, 1,000 years later should have made greater progress than 1,000 years ago. However, they did not have the pills that had been lost, and other things were not much better than what Hongzhuang knew. Could it be that they had not made any progress in the past 1,000 years? However, after Di Beichun's words, a look of doubt appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. She also could not understand this point. This was because all of this did not make sense. However, this was the Shengxian continent that they knew. I don't understand this point either. I keep feeling that something is wrong. Perhaps something major had happened in the past 1,000 years, and that's why it has become like this. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. With the change of time, many things had improved. However, there could also be some major events that caused history to regress. Seeing this, Di Beichun nodded slightly. This was the only way to explain the current situation. Wife, give it a try. If you succeed, it will be a great feat, Di Beichun said with a smile. Chapter 1960. Seeing that Di Beichun was so supportive of her, the smile in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes deepened. Her thoughts were the same as Di Beichun's. Since she was still so young, why not try more things? There were many things that could only be improved by breaking the norm. While Bailey Hongzhuang was meditating to recover, Di Beichun, Xiaohe, and Xiaoba were also cultivating. Only Baisher was eating. Ever since it had not come to the desert world, it had been eating ordinary demon crystals. Hence, it could not help but feel excited when it came to the desert world today. Their master wanted to refine pills here, so they could not leave and go to other places. However, based on its understanding of the demon beasts in the desert world, even if they did not look for these demon beasts would take the initiative to look for them. Hence, this battle was still unavoidable. It only hoped that there would not be too many demon beasts. Otherwise, they would disturb its master's pill refinement. After Bailey Hongzhuang had recovered her condition, she began to try refining 2 pills at the same time. She paid full attention to every change in the alchemy furnace and controlled everything inside. This was the first time she had tried to refine 2 pills at the same time. Hence, there were some areas where even she could not be sure of the correct method. After all, refining 2 pills at the same time was completely different from refining 1 pill. Hence, Bailey Hongzhuang could only continue to fumble around. She carefully controlled the heat and paid attention to the slightest change in the process. Bailey Hongzhuang realized that as the number of medicinal herbs increased, the difficulty of controlling the heat also increased. A faint and dry voice sounded, followed by a wave of unpleasant smell. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was filled with impatience. Just as she had expected, even though she had carefully controlled everything, she had still failed in the end. Di Beichun saw Bailey Hongzhuang's state and smiled. He continued to cheer for Bailey Hongzhuang. This failure was within their expectations. Hence, there was nothing strange about it. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile. She was afraid that she would continue to sink into this failure. In the following period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang continued to try and fail. During this process, some demon beasts had tried to sneak up on them. However, Di Beichun and the three beasts had dealt with them perfectly. Bailey Hongzhuang had absolute trust in Di Beichun. Hence, even when there were demon beasts around them, Bailey Hongzhuang did not lose her focus. As long as there were not too many demon beasts, she did not have to worry about this problem. The existence of the desert world was undoubtedly a time cheat, allowing her to have more time. In the blink of an eye, 3 days, Bailey Hongzhuang had suffered countless failures. However, it did not extinguish her determination and hope. Although the result was the same, in Bailey Hongzhuang's view, she had more confidence in refining the 2 Dan pills. In the past, he had never had any understanding of this aspect, so he could only seek experience through repeated failures during the refining process. After so many failures, she found that she had a deeper understanding of the situation. Not only did she have a better understanding of refining 2 pills at the same time, but she also had a better understanding of refining pills. Chapter 1961. Di Beichun's actions in front of the pill refinery hall had also reached Yu Linfeng and Nan Gongwu's ears. However, Yu Linfeng and Nan Gongwu didn't care about this. Yao Yiren was the one who had taken the initiative to look for trouble. Since he couldn't beat the other party, he could only blame himself. Linfeng, Hongzhuang must have gone to the pill refinery hall to buy ingredients, because she doesn't have enough pills. Let's help her. A look of concern flashed across Nan Gongwu's eyes. She had some understanding of Bailey Hongzhuang's state of cultivation in the Wind Canyon. She had consumed quite a lot of energy recovery pills every day. According to the information she had received, Bailey Hongzhuang had gone to the pill refinery hall to buy ingredients for the energy recovery pill today. Hearing this, Yu Linfeng smiled faintly. The current Nan Gongwu was really concerned about Bailey Hongzhuang. Don't worry, Hongzhuang has her own plans. Her pill refining skills are already very outstanding. If she has the chance to cultivate her pill refining skills, it wouldn't be a bad idea. He knew about Bailey Hongzhuang's attainments in other areas. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation had increased by quite a bit, she shouldn't just abandon other areas like this. Nan Gongwu frowned slightly. She didn't feel that Yu Linfeng's words made sense. From Bailey Hongzhuang's state of cultivation, it could be seen that she desperately wanted to improve. I don't care. I'll bring the ingredients to Hongzhuang tomorrow. Seeing Nan Gongwu's determined look, Yu Linfeng felt a little helpless but could only chuckle softly. Okay. Yu Linfeng smiled faintly. Do whatever you want. Seeing this, Nan Gongwu's face revealed a smile. In the following days, Bailey Hongzhuang cultivated in the Wind Canyon during the day and cultivated on the Heaven Stairway at night. Occasionally, she would go to the desert world to refine pills. Her days were very good. Gradually, Bailey Hongzhuang stayed in the Wind Canyon for longer and longer. Now, only Pei Yifan could compare to her. For hours later, Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't far away. It wouldn't be long before Bailey Hongzhuang could complete the test. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang was preparing to go to the Wind Canyon to cultivate, when suddenly, He Mu hurriedly appeared in front of her and Di Beichun. Young master, there's news as a message. As He Mu's voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's eyes narrowed, and the atmosphere instantly became tense. Di Beichun quickly took the letter from He Mu's hand and opened it. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was fixed on the letter in Di Beichun's hand. It had been more than half a year since they asked the Heaven's Stairway Heart for information. During this period of time, they hadn't received any news. Although she didn't show it on the surface, she couldn't help but worry in her heart. There hadn't been any news for so long. Could be bad news. Now, the news from the Heaven's Stairway heart finally came. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that her heart was about to stop beating. Her hands under her sleeves couldn't help but clench her clothes. Bailey Hongzhuang was expressionless, but one could see her nervousness and apprehension from her eyes. There were two possibilities for this news. One was that they knew the location of their parents, which was undoubtedly excellent news. The second was they couldn't get any more news about their parents at this moment. Bailey Hongzhuang was extremely nervous. She was so worried that it would be the second possibility. She couldn't bear that kind of result. Chapter 1962. After Di Beichun finished reading the contents of the letter, a relaxed smile appeared on his face. Fortunately, the situation wasn't the worst. Bailey Hongzhuang, whose heart had been hanging by a thread, saw the smile on Di Beichun's face, and her tightly clenched fists quietly loosened. Beichun, what does the letter say? Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes were fixated on Di Beichun. Although she was less apprehensive, she was still somewhat nervous. She had no understanding of her parents' current situation. With Yu Siqing's deranged behavior, she was really worried about how her parents would be tortured. In fact, she didn't even dare to think about it. Di Beichun handed the letter in his hand to Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "The Heaven Slaughter Pavilion has already found the location where your parents are being held. However, it's within the Yu clan, so it won't be easy for us to rescue them." In his opinion, as long as he knew that Hongzhuang's parents were still alive, it was already the best news. Although it would be very difficult to rescue them, there would always be a way. As long as they made proper arrangements, there would definitely be a way. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly finished reading the contents of the letter, and her heart relaxed a little. The contents of the letter were very simple, but every sentence contained important information. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were being held in the Yu clan in the dungeon below Yu Siqing's residence. All these years, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were often tortured by Yu Siqing, so their injuries were probably very serious. However, the only thing worth rejoicing over was that their bodies weren't crippled. Even if they were rescued, they would probably need to recuperate for a long time before they could recover. Bailey Hongzhuang read the contents of the letter. This situation was within her expectations. With Yu Siqing's abnormal behavior, the torture was definitely unavoidable. Most importantly, Yu Siqing had actually imprisoned her parents in her residence. This made torturing them even more convenient. In Bailey Hongzhuang's heart, there was a faint guess. After all, Yu Siqing's medical skills were superb, and her poison skills were also outstanding. Anyone who studied the art of medicine and poison would have to do experiments on a daily basis. She felt that it was very likely that Yu Siqing would use her parents as test subjects. If not for this, Yu Siqing would not have needed to imprison her parents in such a close place. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart tightened. Doing experiments was extremely cruel. If Yu Siqing really did that, then she would let Yu Siqing be her test subject in the future. Now that we have confirmed the location of my parents, when should we set off to rescue them? Bailey Hongzhuang didn't lose her cool after hearing the news. She needed to remain calm at such time. Otherwise, if something went wrong during the rescue, they wouldn't even have the chance to regret it. The Yu clan is heavily guarded, and Yu Siqing usually stays in her room. I'm afraid it will be very difficult for us to rescue Uncle and Auntie without anyone noticing. Di Beichun's eyes were filled with contemplation. Now wasn't the time to completely fall out with the Yu clan. Right now, the most important thing was to rescue Uncle and Auntie, so it wasn't appropriate to act rashly and alert the enemy. As for how to rescue them, they needed to plan at length. Chapter 1963. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun immediately returned to their sleeping quarters. After hearing this news, Bailey Hongzhuang clearly no longer had any thoughts of going to Wine Canyon to cultivate. Right now, she only wanted to save her parents and escape from that sea of suffering. If Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing didn't want to save her, they wouldn't have gone to the Yu clan to seek medical treatment and expose their whereabouts. Speaking of which, All the pain they had suffered all these years was because of her. The three beasties also sat quietly beside Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. They were also extremely concerned about this matter. After waiting for so long, they finally received news. Now, they needed to formulate a plan to save them. That's right. We really need to think of a plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain. Di Beichen nodded. According to the information he obtained from his master, Yu Xiqing's strength was also very strong. If they were to face Yu Xiqing directly, their strength wouldn't be her opponent at all. Before this, he had already investigated Yu Xiqing's situation. This woman didn't like anyone else all these years. She shut herself in her room all day long. No one knew what she was doing. It wasn't an easy thing to make Yu Xiqing leave her room. Moreover, the Yu clan was heavily guarded. It was really too difficult to do this. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned and pondered. She didn't know much about Yu Xiqing. How could they make Yu Xiqing leave? For a while, she really couldn't think of a way. Mo Yunjue and the others are waiting for us in a city near the Yu clan. We'll meet up with them at that time and then act together. Di Beichun continued. In this letter, Mo Yunjue had already explained this point. Obviously, Mo Yunjue planned to help them to the end. Di Beichun was also very grateful to Mo Yunjue for his help. Yu Xiqing had hidden everything so well. He couldn't get any news even after asking around for a long time. The Shitian Pavilion must have spent a lot of effort to find out. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. However, we have to figure out what to do first. Master, why don't we let the sect leader go personally and lure Yu Xiqing away before we make our move? Xiaobai suggested. Although Yu Xiqing rarely left the house, Situ Yin had gone to look for her before. As long as Situ Yin went there again, Yu Xiqing would definitely leave the house. Di Beichen shook his head slightly. That Yu Xiqing is extremely cunning. I heard from my master that the last time he went to question Yu Xiqing only stood at the back door of the Yu clan and talked to him. She didn't even leave the Yu clan's territory. Yu Xiqing knew how much her master hated her, so she didn't dare to go anywhere else for fear of taking her life. Even if her master went there again, Yu Xiqing would not be far away. Then, she will be the first to notice our movements. Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang frowned even more. This Yu Xiqing was indeed a cunning old fox. However, with the things that Yu Xiqing had done in the past, it was normal for her grandfather to want her life. If this method doesn't work, what else can we do? Xiao He was puzzled. Then, should we just let someone pass the message that someone is looking for her and ask her to leave? Chapter 1964. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun racked their brains, but they couldn't come up with anything. The only thing they could think of was to find something that Yu Xiqing was interested in. This way, Yu Xiqing would naturally be attracted away. Moreover, they were going to rescue someone this time, so there wouldn't be a lot of people going. A direct confrontation would be disastrous, so they could only avoid it as much as possible. As for digging an underground tunnel, that was obviously impossible. For a moment, the two were at their wits' end. Di Beichun, why don't we tell grandfather about this first, and see if he has any ideas? Bailey Hongzhuang slowly suggested. In this situation, they could only hope that there was strength in numbers. Tian had more experience than them, and he had a better understanding of Yu Xiqing. Perhaps he would have a good idea. Di Beichen nodded. I'll have He Mu pass this news to Master immediately. For a long time, Master had also been waiting for news from Lan Yunxiao and his wife. He believed that Master would be extremely excited when he heard the news. Suddenly, Di Beichen's eyes changed slightly as he asked, Wifey, who do you think Yu Xiqing cares about the most? Grandfather? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her brows, not understanding Di Beichen's meaning. All these years, Yu Xiqing had never liked another man other than her grandfather. Just from this point alone, one could see how much Yu Xiqing liked her grandfather. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang noticed Di Beichen's deep gaze, another name appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's mind. Grandmother. From the beginning, Yu Xiqing was filled with jealousy towards Mu Jin's. Back in Tiangang's sect, Yu Siqing was already jealous of Mu Jin's. In all these years, everything that Si Tuyin had done made Yu Siqing even more jealous of Mu Jin's. Mu Jin's had left for so many years, but Si Tuyin had never given up on searching for her. Yu Siqing had chased after Si Tuyin for so many years, but Si Tuyin hadn't even spared her a glance. Thus, all these years, the person she hated and cared about the most was Mu Jin's. If not for this, Yu Siqing wouldn't have thought of ways to torture Mu Lingbing and Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang understood so quickly, Di Beichen's eyes shone with admiration. That's right. If we use Master's wife's name to lure the tiger away from the mountain, perhaps it will have a better effect. Di Beichen thought. Wife, what do you think? A bright light shone in his deep phoenix eyes. This is indeed a feasible method. As a woman herself, use SS. In front of S's was. S's SAS with this. Let's discuss this with grandfather and come up with a solution. After knowing the location of her parents, Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't as anxious as before. No matter what, she had to think of a safe way to succeed in one go. Otherwise, once Yu Siqing found out, the situation would become even more serious. Di Beichen quickly wrote a letter and handed it to Mu, ordering him to send this news back to Tiangang sect. Master also needed to know this news immediately. Chapter 1965. After Mu left, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen pondered for a while before Bailey Hongzhuang spoke. Beichen, let's inform Master and Mistress of this news. They had seen with their own eyes how well Master and Mistress had treated her these few days. Moreover, Master and Mistress were very concerned about news of her parents. Perhaps Master and Mistress would come up with some good ideas. All right, Di Beichen nodded without hesitation. He and Bailey Hongzhuang had stayed in Limitless Palace for so long. They were very clear about the sincerity of Palace Master Yu and Mistress Yu. Now that they were in the same camp as Palace Master Yu and Mistress Yu, they naturally wouldn't hide the news from them. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were about to leave, a voice came from outside the house. What news do you have for us? Nangong Wu's face was still blooming with a bright and flamboyant smile. No matter when or where, she was always so eye-catching, and people would notice her at a glance. Seeing Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu's appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a joyful smile. Master, Mistress, why are you free today? Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. She was just about to look for Master and Mistress Yu, and they were already here. I know that you didn't go to Wine Canyon to cultivate today, so I came to take a look. However, I heard that you were going to look for us the moment I arrived. What's the matter? Nangong Wu asked with a smile. During the days when Hongzhuang was in Limitless Palace, she had seen her hard work clearly. Therefore, she admired Bailey Hongzhuang even more. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other with a serious expression on their faces. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's expressions, Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu's expressions also changed a little. It seemed that what Bailey Hongzhuang and Mistress Yu wanted to tell them wasn't simple. Master, Mistress Yu, we just received news from Shitian Pavilion. As soon as he said this, Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu's expressions changed. At this moment, they also understood why Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen would reveal such a serious expression. What's the result? Yu Linfeng asked in a deep voice. Now, we have determined the location where Hongzhuang's parents are being held. However, the location is very sensitive. It's very difficult to rescue them without anyone knowing. Di Beichen's eyes revealed a dignified expression. He slowly told the contents of the letter to Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu. After knowing all this, Nangong Wu couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. As long as the location of Hongzhuang's parents is confirmed, this is great news. She had always been worried about Hongzhuang's identity. If something happened to her parents, she was afraid that Hongzhuang wouldn't be able to bear it. Fortunately, God wasn't so cruel to Hongzhuang. At least, she still had a chance to reunite with her parents. You're saying that Hong Zhuang's parents are being held under Yu Siqing's residence? Yu Linfeng walked to Di Beichen's side and sat down. His eyes were heavy and thoughtful. Di Beichen nodded slightly and told Yu Linfeng in detail about the information he learned when he investigated Yu Siqing. At this time, he also hoped that Yu Linfeng could give him some advice. Chapter 1966. If that's the case, then Yu Siqing doesn't want others to know that she has imprisoned the Lan couple. Ordinary matters wouldn't be able to lure the tiger away from the mountain, so Yu Siqing definitely wouldn't leave so easily. Yu Linfeng's eyes flashed with a complicated light of wisdom. Just from Yu Siqing's actions these past few years, he was able to deduce a lot of things. Di Beichen told Yu Linfeng about the plan that he and Bailey Hongzhuang had thought of. Palace Master Yu, do you think this will work? As the Palace Master of Limitless Palace, Yu Linfeng had led Limitless Palace to its current position. His methods were far from ordinary people's, so his opinion must be extremely important. The method you mentioned has a certain degree of feasibility, but you don't have enough understanding of Mu Jin's. On the contrary, Yu Siqing and Mu Jin's have been sisters for so many years, so she understands her very well. If Yu Siqing sees through you when you use this, she will definitely be vigilant, and everything will not be so easy. Hearing Yu Linfeng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart turned cold. It seemed that they really didn't have any other way to resolve this. Nangong Wu couldn't help but frown as she listened to Yu Linfeng and Di Beichen discussing such a complicated matter. In her opinion, this was a very simple matter. However, in the eyes of others, this matter was complicated enough. If you ask me, we should use the simplest method to resolve this matter, Nangong Wu said. Following Nangong Wu's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two couldn't help but look at Nangong Wu. They didn't know what method Nangong Wu had thought of. If we directly throw some explosives into the Yu clan, it will definitely cause a commotion. Yu Siqing's position in the Yu clan isn't low, so she will naturally go and take a look. Furthermore, in this kind of situation, the Yu clan will definitely be in chaos. You can take advantage of the chaos to rescue Hong Zhuang's parents. As soon as she said this, Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, and Yu Linfeng looked at each other, a bright light appearing in their eyes. This method is indeed not bad. Bailey Hongzhuang's face revealed a look of understanding. She had originally wanted to cause a certain amount of chaos in the Yu clan so that it would be easier for them to move. However, it wasn't easy to create chaos. If all the Yu clan members were running around, it would have to create a huge disturbance. After thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't think of a good idea. However, after Nangong Wu's reminder, she finally understood the reason behind it. Yu Siqing's the Yu Siqing was Yu Siqing's, TSS to T to them Yu S to B. To S to B. He believed that Yu Siqing wouldn't notice this either. Let's do as your mistress says, Yu Linfeng said with certainty. Just do as I say. Nangong Wu obviously didn't expect everyone to agree with her idea. In fact, she was just casually saying it. She usually liked to study explosives, so when she talked about this matter, she also mentioned explosives. However, she didn't expect this matter to be decided like this. Wasn't this a very difficult problem to solve? Why did they decide in such a short time? Nangong Wu couldn't understand. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.